Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto became Squad Zero captain and fell in love with Senjumaru Shutara? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Say. Vent throne. The dimensional tear shimmered like heat rising from summer pavement, barely noticeable against the blue sky. Naruto Uzumaki paused on a high branch, squinting at the anomaly. For weeks, he'd been tracking these disturbances around the borders of the 5 great nations, strange ripples in reality that appeared in the aftermath of the 4th Great Ninja War. Another one, he muttered, adjusting the Hokage cloak draped over his shoulders. At 20, Naruto had grown into the legacy Kakashi had entrusted him with, not yet officially Hokage, but carrying its weight while his former sensei focused on rebuilding efforts. His fingers formed a familiar cross seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 2 perfect copies appeared beside him, nodding in silent understanding before dispersing to secure the perimeter. Standard procedure for these investigations. Document, contain if possible, report back. No engagement. Except this tear looked different, larger, more stable. Naruto approached cautiously, feeling the air grow heavier with each step. The space around the anomaly seemed to bend, distorting the forest behind it. Kurama, you sense that? He asked inwardly. The 9 tails stirred within him. This isn't like the others. The energy, it feels ancient. Older than the sage himself. Naruto extended his hand, sage mode activating instinctively as he gathered natural energy to better sense the disturbance. The familiar orange pigmentation formed around his eyes, and suddenly the tear wasn't just visible, it was a gaping wound in reality, pulsing with unfamiliar chakra. I should get Sasuke here before. The tear expanded violently, engulfing Naruto before he could complete the thought. For one disorienting moment, he felt suspended between realities, weightless, formless. The gravity reasserted itself with brutal force. He crashed through what felt like layers of resistance, each one thinner than the last, until he plummeted onto solid ground with enough impact to crater the earth beneath him. Pain radiated through his body, but years of training kicked in. Naruto rolled to his feet, immediately assessing his surroundings. This wasn't the forest anymore. The air itself felt different, thinner yet somehow more substantial, charged with energy unlike anything he'd encountered. He stood in what appeared to be a traditional Japanese town, except the architecture looked centuries old. People in simple kimonos stared at him in shock, backing away from the crater his arrival had created in the dirt street. Where the hell am I? He muttered, turning slowly. Somewhere beyond our world, Kurama answered, sounding troubled. I can feel souls everywhere. We're in a realm of the dead, Naruto. Before Naruto could process this, shouts erupted from down the street. Black-robed figures were rushing toward him, swords drawn. Their spiritual pressure washed over him. Not chakra, but something similar yet fundamentally different. Unidentified Ryoka, surrender immediately. The lead figure called out, hand on his sword hilt. Naruto raised his hands slightly, keeping them visible. Easy. I'm not looking for trouble. There was some kind of portal, and he's wearing strange clothes. Look at those markings. One of the black-robed soldiers pointed at the Hokage cloak with its flame patterns. Could be a hollow in disguise. His spiritual pressure is off the charts. Naruto frowned. Hollow. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Naruto Uzumaki from Konohagakure, and I draw your Zanpakuto. The leader demanded, pulling his own sword. Or surrender. The tension in the air shifted from cautious to hostile in an instant. Naruto sensed killing intent. Different from shinobi, but unmistakable. These warriors meant business. I don't know what a Zanpakuto is, Naruto said calmly. But I'm not your enemy. The leader exchanged glances with his companions. Then you'll come with us for questioning. Sure, if you put those swords away and explain where I am. Instead of lowering their weapons, the black-robed figures tightened their formation. One whispered something about captain-level Ryutsu, whatever that meant. Naruto could feel Kurama growing restless within him. They won't listen, Naruto. These Soul Reapers are bound by strict protocols. They sense your power and see a threat. Soul Reapers, Naruto whispered, His momentary distraction was all they needed. 3 of the warriors flash-stepped around him, moving with speed that impressed even Naruto, and attempted to restrain him with binding Kido. Bakudo number 63, Seijo Sabaku. One called out, as golden chains of energy shot toward Naruto. Pure instinct took over. Naruto twisted, narrowly avoiding the spiritual chains, and leapt backward with enhanced speed. I said I'm not looking for a fight. Then surrender, Ryoka. More Soul Reapers appeared, surrounding him completely. Naruto sighed, a lifetime of conflict making the next moves automatic. He formed a Rasengan in his right hand, just enough power to demonstrate his abilities without causing serious harm. The swirling blue orb hummed with chakra, drawing gasps from the surrounding warriors. That's not a Kido. What kind of power is that? Is he manifesting his Zanpakuto without drawing a sword? The lead Soul Reaper made a decision. Take him down. Limit release authorized. What followed was chaos. Zens of Soul Reapers attacked simultaneously with a mix of sword techniques and energy-based attacks Naruto had never seen before. He ducked, dodged, and deflected, careful not to seriously injure anyone while defending himself. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen Narutos appeared in puffs of smoke, scattering to create confusion. He's multiplying. It's not an illusion. They all have the same spiritual pressure. The original Naruto attempted once more to de-escalate. Listen, I came through some kind of portal by accident. I'm not your enemy. His words fell on deaf ears as more reinforcements arrived. These wearing white Haori over their black uniforms. The newcomers radiated power on a different scale altogether. Lieutenant Aoba, status report, demanded a stern woman with short silver hair. Captain Azane. The Ryoka appeared from nowhere, created a massive spiritual disturbance, and is resisting capture. He can create solid copies of himself and manifests unknown energy attacks. Naruto dispersed his clones, hoping to appear less threatening. Captain, is it? I'm trying to explain. I'm from another world. I fell through some kind of tear in space. Captain Azane Katetsu of the 4th Division studied him carefully. Her trained healer's eye noting the strange mixture of energies within him. Stand down, everyone. Let me handle this. The battlefield quieted immediately. Naruto relaxed slightly, until he felt an overwhelming presence materialize behind him. My, what an interesting specimen. The voice sent chills down Naruto's spine. He whirled to find a man in a black and white painted face smiling at him with disturbing intensity. Captain Kuretsuchi. Azane acknowledged with visible discomfort. When I felt this unusual spiritual pressure, I simply had to investigate personally. Captain Mayuri Kuretsuchi of the 12th Division circled Naruto, examining him like a fascinating insect. Not a hollow, not a Quincy, not a standard human. What exactly are you, boy? Naruto maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. I'm a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf Village. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Shinobi. Kuretsuchi's eyes widened with scientific curiosity. How fascinating. I must take you back to my laboratory immediately for thorough examination. I'll need tissue samples, spiritual core analysis, and a full dissection of your energy pathways. That won't be happening, Naruto stated firmly. Gathering his chakra, the yellow glow of 6 Paths Sage Mode began to emanate from his body. The sudden spike in power caused everyone present to step back. Captain Kuretsuchi's smile only widened. Oh my, such potent energy. Now I simply must study you. Before tension could escalate further, a new presence appeared, calm, controlled, and radiating authority. Why that dwarfed even the captains present. That will be quite enough, Captain Kuretsuchi. All Soul Reapers immediately dropped to one knee as a distinguished older man with a long white beard and flow. Wing purple robes stepped into the clearing. His spiritual pressure was unlike anything Naruto had felt. Deep, ancient, and carrying the weight of countless centuries. Head Captain Kiraku, Azane acknowledged respectfully. Shunsui Kiraku, head captain of the 13 court guard squads, approached Naruto with casual ease that belied his overwhelming power. Forgive the rough welcome, he said with a disarming smile. We don't get many visitors from other dimensions. He tipped his straw hat slightly. Though I must say, you've caused quite a stir. We felt your arrival all the way in the Seraite. Naruto sensed no immediate threat from this man, despite his immense power. I didn't mean to intrude. There was a tear in space, and I was investigating. Yes, yes, Kiraku waved dismissively. The dimensional disturbances. We've been monitoring them ourselves. His expression grew serious, though none have been large enough to transport a living being before. Especially one with your unique composition. Head Captain, Kuretsuchi interjected, I insist this specimen be remanded to the Department of Research and Development immediately. The scientific value will be preserved without dissection, Captain. Kiraku cut him off firmly. His attention returned to Naruto. You said your name is Naruto Uzumaki. That's right. Well, Naruto Uzumaki, welcome to Soul Society, the afterlife. As your world might understand it, I'm afraid returning you home may not be simple. Naruto absorbed this information, remembering Kurama's earlier assessment. The afterlife. That explained the strange energy and the focus on souls. I appreciate your help, Head Captain Kiraku. I just need to understand what's happening so I can find my way back. Kiraku stroked his beard thoughtfully. The dimensional tears you mentioned have been appearing in our world too, increasing in frequency over the past several months. Your arrival may not be coincidence. He gestured toward the white buildings visible in the distance. Come with me to the Seraite. We need to understand what brought you here and what it might mean. As they prepared to depart, the ground beneath them trembled. Moss. Sieve's spiritual pressure descended upon them, dark, heavy, and unquestionably hostile. What the? Naruto began. Manos Grande. A Soul Reaper shouted, multiple signatures approaching fast. The sky above them cracked open, revealing a dark void from which emerged towering black figures with white masks and gaping holes in their chests. Their spiritual pressure was corrosive, malevolent. Hollows, Kiraku explained grimly. Lost souls corrupted by negative emotion. Those larger ones are Manos Grande, formed when hundreds of hollows merged together. Soul Reapers mobilized instantly, forming battle formations. Captain Azane began coordinating medical response teams while Kuretsuchi looked more annoyed than concerned by the interruption. Naruto watched as the first wave of Soul Reapers engaged the monsters. Their swords slicing through masks with practiced precision. But there were too many, and the sheer spiritual pressure of the Manos was overwhelming the lower-ranked warriors. Your people need help, Naruto said. Stepping forward, Kiraku raised an eyebrow. This is Soul Society business, Naruto-san. You're a guest. Where I come from, we don't let allies fight alone. Golden chalk. Ra flared around Naruto as he accessed Kurama's power. The transformation was immediate, his body wrapped in glowing energy that formed into the familiar chakra cloak, complete with truth-seeking orbs hovering behind him. The display of power silenced everyone in the vicinity. Even the hollows paused, sensing the sudden appearance of unprecedented energy. Without waiting for permission, Naruto leapt skyward, his enhanced speed carrying him directly toward the largest Manos. The monster fired a crimson Sero blast that Naruto deflected with a casual swipe of his chakra-covered hand. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Hundreds of golden-cloaked Narutos appeared, scattering among the hollows like a swarm of fireflies. Each clone attacked with perfectly synchronized Rasengan variations, tearing through the Manos masks with devastating efficiency. Soul Reapers stopped to stare at the spectacle, a single being matching the firepower of an entire division. Captain Kuretsuchi's eyes gleamed with sciency. Avarice while Kiraku watched with calculating interest. The original Naruto hovered above the battlefield, hands clasped together as he gathered natural energy to supplement Kurama's power. 6 grams. Glowing chakra arms extended from his back, each forming a different jutsu simultaneously. Sage Art. Super-tailed beast Rasenshuriken. The massive spiraling shuriken of wind and chakra cut through a line of approaching Manos, disintegrating their masks completely before detonating in a dome of golden energy that purified rather than destroyed, converting the corrupt spiritual energy back to its natural state. Below, Soul Reapers watched in awe as the purified spirits dispersed peacefully instead of dissolving in the usual manner of defeated hollows. He's not just destroying them, Captain Azane observed. He's healing them somehow. The battle ended as quickly as it had begun. Naruto descended slowly, his chakra cloak fading as he touched down beside the head captain. Sorry if I overstepped, he said, genuinely concerned he might have violated some protocol. Kiraku studied him with new appreciation. Not at all. That was educational. He gestured toward a messenger butterfly that had appeared during the fight. And it seems our timing is fortuitous. The Royal Guard has taken an interest in your arrival. Royal Guard. Squad 0. Hieraku explained. The Soul King's Purrs. Onal Guard. They rarely involve themselves in Soul Society affairs. Yet they've requested your immediate presence in the royal realm. Kuretsuchi sputtered indignantly. This is outrageous. My research takes precedence over. The Royal Guard outranks us all, Captain, Hieraku reminded him firmly. Even me. Naruto sensed the sudden shift in atmosphere. Whatever this Royal Guard was, they clearly commanded immense respect and authority. Why would they be interested in me? Hieraku's expression was unreadable. That, Naruto Uzumaki, is what concerns me most. The Royal Guard doesn't take interest in outsiders. Unless something truly significant is happening. The journey to the royal realm defied Naruto's understanding of physical space. The Tenchiren, a massive pillar that served as TRAN's portation, rocketed upward through layers of reality itself, eventually delivering him to a series of floating cities unlike anything he'd ever seen. Hieraku had not accompanied him, explaining that even captains required special permission to enter the royal realm. Instead, Naruto found himself escorted by silent guards through palatial structures that seemed to defy gravity. This place is incredible, he muttered, earning no response from his stoic escorts. They arrived at a vast courtyard where 5 individuals stood waiting. Even without sensing their spiritual pressure, Naruto would have. He recognized their importance from their bearing alone. Each exuded power and authority that made even the captains he'd met seem ordinary by comparison. At the center stood a mountain of a man with a pompadour hairstyle and thick black beard, his massive frame draped in royal garments. To his right was a slender man with swept-back dark hair and an X-shaped mark across his face. Beside him stood a large, robust woman with purple hair tied in loops. On the left side were 2 more figures, a bald man with a black mustache wearing monk-like attire, and finally, a tall, slender woman with an alabo rate headdress and multiple mechanical arms extending from her back. It was this last figure that drew Naruto's attention most strongly. Her face was partially concealed, but her eyes studied him with clinical precision, as if measuring every aspect of his being. Welcome to the royal realm, Naruto Uzumaki, the central figure boomed. I am Ikebe Hyasube, commander of the Royal Guard. We've been expecting you. Naruto blinked in surprise. You have, indeed. Ikebe gestured to his companions. Allow me to introduce my colleagues. Tenjiro Kirinji, Hiryo Hakafuna, Etsunamiya, and Senjumaru Shutara. Each nodded in acknowledgement, except Shutara, who continued her silent assessment. I'm honored to meet you, Naruto said with a polite bow, but I'm confused. How did you know I was coming? Ikebe's laughter rumbled like distant thunder. The Soul King sees all disturbances in the fabric of reality. Your arrival was significant. The dimensional tears, Naruto surmised. Precisely, Hiryo Hakafuna spoke up, her voice surprisingly gentle for her imposing appearance. They've been appearing with increasing frequency across all realms. We believed them to be merely symptoms, added Tenjiro Kirinji. Until you came through one. Naruto frowned. In my world, we've been monitoring similar anomalies since the end of the 4th Great Ninja War. I was investigating one when it pulled me through. Etsunamiya stepped forward, circling Naruto with obvious curiosity. And what exactly are you, my friend? Not a soul, not a living human in the conventional sense, yet here you stand in the royal realm. Breathing our air like you belong. I'm a shinobi, Naruto answered simply. You're far more than that. Senjumaru Shutara spoke for the first time, her voice cool and measured. Her mechanical arms retracted slightly as she approached. You harbor a second consciousness within you, ancient, powerful, and bound to your soul. Unusual enough, but more intriguing is your spiritual composition itself. She extended a slender finger, stopping just short of touching his chest. Your spiritual core has been fundamentally altered. You exist simultaneously in multiple states of being. Kurama, Naruto explained. The 9-tailed fox. We're partners. Ikebe's expression grew serious. This partnership may explain how you traversed dimensions intact. But it doesn't explain why the tears are appearing in the first place. A distant rumble interrupted their conversation. Not thunder, but something deeper, as if reality itself were groaning in protest. Another one, Kiryu said grimly. Larger than before. Without warning, the sky above them fractured, a massive dimensional tear splitting the perfect blue expanse. Unlike the subtle anomaly Naruto had investigated in the forest, this was a violent wound in space-time, pulsing with chaotic energy. It's never manifested in the royal realm before, Tenjiro said, alarm evident in his voice. From within the tear emerged a creature unlike anything Naruto had seen, neither hollow nor shinobi. It resembled a serpent composed of crackling energy, its body stretching impossibly as it pulled itself through the dimensional gap. Cosmic entity, Ikebe identified immediately, a guardian of the boundaries between realms. The creature's attention fixed directly on Naruto, its eyeless face somehow communicating recognition and rage. It released a scream that vibrated at a frequency beyond sound, pure spiritual distortion that made the very air waver. It's targeting him, Shutara observed coolly. Naruto didn't need the warning. He could feel the creature's intent locked on him specifically. It thinks I violated some boundary, he realized aloud. By coming through the tear, the entity struck with impossible speed, crossing the vast courtyard in an instant. The royal guard moved to intercept, but Naruto was already reacting, his body glowing with Six Paths Sage Mode energy as he leapt directly toward the threat. The collision sent shockwaves across the royal realm. Naruto formed a massive Rasengan, enhanced with natural energy, and drove it into the creature's core. Instead of damaging it, however, the attack seemed to be absorbed. The entity growing more substantial with each passing second. It's feeding on his power. Etsu called out. Ikebe stepped forward, brush in hand. Then we remove its name. Before he could act, Shutara intercepted, her mechanical arms extending in a complex pattern. Wait, this entity exists outside our reality's rules. Your name manipulation may be ineffective. The creature coiled around Naruto, constricting with increasing pressure. Even with Kurama's enhanced strength, Naruto felt his ribs begin to crack under the strain. Got any better ideas? He managed through gritted teeth. Shutara's eyes narrowed in concentration. Perhaps. Her mechanical arms wove an intricate pattern, golden thread materializing between her fingers. The creature exists between dimensions. It needs an anchor to maintain form in our reality. She glanced at her colleagues. I need time. Ikebe nodded. You'll have it. What followed was a demonstration of why the Royal Guard commanded such respect throughout Soul Society. Each member attacked with perfect coordination, their abilities complementing one another with practiced precision. Tenjiro manipulated spiritual infuse water that seemed to slow the creature's movements. Kiryu altered the surrounding reishi density, creating pressure points that forced the entity to adjust its grip on Naruto. Etsu wielded what appeared to be an unforged Zanpakuto, a blade of pure potential that phased through dimensional barriers. Ikebe commanded fundamental forces with each sweep of his brush, redefining portions of reality itself. Yet for all their power, the creature adapted quickly, learning their patterns and growing stronger with each attack it absorbed. It maintained its death grip on Naruto, who struggled to breathe as the pressure increased. We need to try something else, Kurama growled within him. This thing feeds on standard chakra. Then let's give it something indigestible, Naruto replied internally, focusing his mind despite the crushing pressure. Drawing on years of sage training, Naruto began gathering natural energy in its purest form, not filtered through his chakra network, but raw and unrefined. The risk was enormous. Gathering too much would turn him to stone, but he needed enough to overload the creature's system. As the Royal Guard continued their assault, creating the diversion Shutara needed, Naruto reached the perfect balance. His body glowed with stone-like patterns that crept across his skin without fully transforming him. Now, Kurama, the Nine Tails channeled its chakra outward in a controlled explosion, carrying the overload of natural energy directly into the creature's core. The entity convulsed, its form destabilizing as it tried to process the contradictory energies. Perfect, Shutara murmured, completing her complex weave. Golden threads shot forward, penetrating the creature's fluctuating form at precise points. Where they connected, reality seemed to solidify, forcing the entity to commit to a single-dimensional state. It's anchored, she called out. Ikebe, the Royal Guard commander needed no further prompting. His brush swept through the air, black ink following its path. Shirafude Ikimonji. The creature froze as the ink covered its form, its very essence being redefined by Aikibe's power. I name you, transient, he declared. And what is transient must pass. The entity's form began to collapse in on itself, its connection to other dimensions severed by Shutara's threading and its existence redefined by Aikibe's naming. With a final, silent scream that rippled through spiritual pressure alone, it imploded into nothingness. The dimensional tear above sealed itself slowly, edges pulling together like a healing wound. Naruto collapsed to his knees, his body battered from the crushing force and the strain of balancing overwhelming natural energy. To his surprise, it was Shutara who reached him first, her mechanical arms upwarding his weight with unexpected gentleness. Impressive control, she commented, her cool voice betraying a hint of genuine interest. You manipulated pure natural energy without succumbing to petrification. Thanks, Naruto managed, wincing as his ribs began to heal. Your thread technique was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. The thousand-armed god's thread, my specialty. She helped him to his feet, studying him with renewed intensity. You should have been crushed immediately. Your physical form shouldn't have withstood that pressure. Naruto grinned despite the pain. I'm pretty hard to kill. Evidently, there was the faintest trace of amusement in her voice. Aikibe approached them, his expression grave despite their victory. The creature was a symptom, not the cause. Something is weakening the barriers between dimensions, something connected to you, Naruto Uzumaki. Me, but I didn't do anything. Perhaps not intentionally, Kiryu interjected kindly. But your very existence, your unique spiritual composition, seems to resonate with these tears. Tenjiro nodded in agreement. The entity targeted you specifically because it sensed you as the anomaly. Naruto absorbed this, concern evident in his expression. If I'm causing these tears somehow, then I need to find a way back to my world before more of those things appear. I'm afraid returning you may not solve the problem. Aikibe said solemnly. The damage is already spreading. These tears are appearing in both our worlds with increasing frequency. We need to understand why. Etsu twirled his unformed blade thoughtfully. And more importantly, we need to learn how to seal them. Shutara's mechanical arms retracted as she stepped away from Naruto. The boy's unique abilities may be key to that understanding. His fusion of spiritual energy types is unprecedented, particularly this, natural energy, he wields. Aikibe stroked his beard contemplatively. I believe the Soul King would agree. He turned to Naruto with sudden formality. Naruto Uzumaki, I propose something unprecedented. The Royal Guard has consisted of 5 members since its inception. Each of us ascended from the 13 court guard squads after making significant contributions to Soul Society. Okay, Naruto said cautiously, sensing where this was heading. I propose you become the 6th member of the Royal Guard, temporarily. Until this dimensional crisis is resolved. The other guard members exchanged surprised glances. Even Shutara raised an eyebrow at the proposal. Aikibe, she began, he isn't even a Soul Reaper. He has no Zanpakuto, no formal training in our ways, yet he possesses power equal to our own, Aikibe countered, and abilities we lack. Abilities that may prove essential in the coming crisis. Naruto looked between them, processing the offer. I appreciate the honor, but my priority has to be protecting both worlds and finding a way home. Which is precisely why you should accept, Aikibe argued. As a member of the Royal Guard, you'll have access to resources and knowledge unavailable anywhere else. If anyone can help you understand these dimensional tiers, it's us. Naruto considered this, seeing the logic. And when the crisis is over, then we'll help you return home, Aikibe promised. With our gratitude. After a moment's thought, Naruto nodded. All right, I accept. Temporarily. Excellent. Aikibe's serious demeanor broke into a broad smile. Then it's decided. Naruto Uzumaki will serve as the 6th seat of the Royal Guard until the dimensional crisis is resolved. There's one problem, Shutara interjected. Royal Guard members must undergo specific preparation and training. He knows nothing of our world, our protocols, our enemies. Aikibe's smile only widened, which is why you, Senjumaru Shutara, will oversee his integration. Her eyes widened fractionally, the closest thing to shock her composed features would allow. Me, surely Kiryu would be better suited. Her nurturing disposition, Your analytical mind and unique perspective on dimensional boundaries make you the ideal mentor, Ikebe insisted. Besides, your palace of threads has ample space for training. Shutara's lips pressed into a thin line, but she offered no further protest. As you wish, Commander. Naruto glanced between them, sensing the tension. I promise not to be too much trouble. Her gaze shifted to him. Cool and assessing. We shall see about that. Naruto Uzumaki. News of Naruto's unprecedented appointment spread through Soul Society with alarming speed. By evening, representatives from the noble houses had gathered in the central 46 chambers, voicing their concerns to the governing body. This is an outrage, Lord Kuchiki declared, his aristocratic features tight with indignation. The royal guard has always been composed of soul reapers who earned their position through centuries of service. This outsider is not even from our world. Similar sentiments echoed throughout the chamber. The noble families united in their opposition to change. Central 46, hidden behind their screens as tradition dictated, deliberated in hushed tones. The royal guard's decisions fall outside our jurisdiction. One council member finally announced. Commander Hyasube's authority comes directly from the Soul King. Then we demand an audience with the Soul King. Another noble shouted. Silence fell over the chamber as the absurdity of the request sank in. No one requested an audience with the Soul King, not even Central 46. Into this tense atmosphere stepped Captain Commander Kiraku, his pink kimono and straw hat looking oddly casual amidst the formal proceedings. If I may offer some perspective, he said lazily, though his eyes were sharp. I witnessed this Ryoka's abilities firsthand. His power rivals that of the Royal Guard, yet he used it to protect our people from Ameno's incursion without hesitation. Power alone does not qualify one for such a position. Lord Kuchiki objected. No, Kiraku agreed, but selfless service might. In the few hours he's been in our world, Naruto Uzumaki has demonstrated more concern for Soul Society's welfare than some who've resided here for centuries. His gaze swept meaningfully across the noble representatives. Furthermore, he continued, these dimensional disturbances affect us all. If Commander Hyasube believes this Ryoka can help address them, perhaps we should trust his judgment. After all, the Royal Guard has protected the Soul King and, by extension, all of us, for millennia without failure. The chamber grew quiet as his words took root. Even the most traditional nobles couldn't deny the Royal Guard's perfect record of service. The sixth seat is temporary, Kiraku reminded them. Once the crisis passes, order will be restored. After further deliberation, Central 46 issued their response. We acknowledge the Royal Guard's authority in this matter. However, we will monitor the situation closely. Should this Ryoka prove a threat rather than an asset, we will take appropriate action. Kiraku smiled beneath the brim of his hat. It was as close to acceptance as they would get. Meanwhile, in the royal realm, Naruto stood on a balcony of the Palace of Threads, gazing at the sprawling landscape of floating cities and impossible architecture. Kurama's consciousness stirred within him. This world is strange, the Nine Tails observed. The spiritual energy here is fundamentally different from chakra, yet somehow compatible. Yeah, Naruto agreed quietly. It feels like it's governed by different rules. But the source is the same. Like two different languages describing the same thing. Philosophical now, are we? Kurama chuckled. Being named to their royal guard has gone to your head. I'm just trying to understand, Naruto replied. The more I know about this world, the better chance we have of fixing these tears and getting home. Your friends will be looking for you, Kurama reminded him. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, they won't give up easily. The thought brought a pang of homesickness. I know, which is why we need to resolve this quickly. Talking to yourself is the first sign of madness, came a cool voice from behind him. Naruto turned to find Shutara standing in the doorway, her mechanical arms retracted, making her AR almost ordinary, though no less imposing. I was talking with Kurama, he explained. The entity within you. She approached, studying him with clinical interest. Fascinating symbiosis. Your spirit, UAL signatures have harmonized almost completely. We've been through a lot together, Naruto said simply. Shutara regarded him silently for a moment. I've prepared quarters for you within the palace. Tomorrow, your training begins. Training. If you're to serve as a royal guard, even temporarily, you must understand our world, our enemies, and our responsibilities. Her tone was matter of fact. You possess remarkable power, but power without knowledge is dangerous. Naruto nodded in agreement. Fair enough. What's first? First, you need appropriate attire. Her gaze traveled critical. Why over his tattered Hokage cloak and battle-worn shinobi gear? The royal guard has standards. Despite himself, Naruto grinned. I'm guessing orange jumpsuits aren't regulation. The faintest trace of amusement flickered across her features before disappearing. Indeed not. Follow me. She led him through the labyrinthine palace to a vast chamber filled with looms, threads of every color imaginable hanging from ceiling to floor. Her mechanical arms extended, selecting threads with precise movements. The garments of the royal guard are no mere uniforms, she explained, working with remarkable speed. They are woven with spiritual thread that enhances and focuses one's powers. Naruto watched in fascination as fabric seemed to materialize between her fingers, taking shape with each passing second. That's amazing. In my world, we have chakra-conductive cloth, but nothing like this. Your world and ours share fundamental principles, despite their differences. Shutara's hands never stopped moving as she spoke. The dimensional tiers suggest our realities were once more closely connected, perhaps even a single realm that diverged. Is that what's happening now? The worlds trying to merge back together. She glanced at him appraising Ly. A sound hypothesis. The entity that attacked you was attempting to maintain separation, a guardian of the boundaries, as Ikebe called it. Which means these tiers aren't natural. Naruto concluded. Something, or someone, is forcing them open. Precisely. Shutara completed her work with a final flourish. Floating before them was a modified Royal Guard uniform, the traditional black and white color scheme, but with subtle orange accents worked into the pattern. The back bore a stylized spiral symbol similar to Naruto's clan emblem, but integrated with elements of the Royal Guard insignia. This should accommodate your fighting style while marking your position, she said, presenting it to him with unexpected formality. It will adjust to your various transformation states as well. Naruto accepted the garment with genuine appreciation. Thank you. It's perfect. Something in his sincere gratitude seemed to catch Shutara off guard. She turned away slightly. It's merely practical. Your previous attire was unsuitable for your new role. As Naruto examined the expertly crafted uniform, a faint tremor ran through the palace. Both of them tensed, alert to the now familiar sensation of a dimensional tear forming. Another one, Naruto said grimly. Yes, but smaller than before. Shutara's mechanical arms extended again, this time in a sensing pattern. Eastern quadrant of the royal realm. The others will handle it. Naruto frowned, already moving toward the balcony. Shouldn't we help? Your training hasn't begun. Despite her words, Shutara was already following him. But I suppose practical experience has its merits. They arrived at the tear's location to find Kiryu Hakafuna already there, manipulating the density of the surrounding reishi to prevent the tear from expanding. Unlike the previous incident, no entity had emerged, but the dimensional wound pulsed with unstable energy. Shutara. Good timing, Kiryu called out. I'm containing it, but we need to seal it before it destabilizes further. Naruto studied the tear carefully, extending his senses in sage mode. It feels different from the one I came through. Less natural, somehow. Shutara's mechanical arms wove complex patterns as she analyzed the anomaly. Correct. This one was forced open from the other side. The other side. Naruto's eyes widened. You mean someone in my world is creating these tears intentionally? It would appear so. Shutara's threads began to encircle the tear, golden light pulsing along their length. The question is, who and why? Naruto thought quickly. After the war, we sealed away Kagaya Otsutsuki, an incredibly powerful being who could manipulate dimensions. Some of her followers survived. They could be trying to free her. Or, Kiryu suggested, your disappearance has prompted a rescue attempt. The tear suddenly expanded, pushing against Kiryu's containment. Through the widening gap, Naruto caught a glimpse of familiar chakra, distinctive, controlled, and unmistakable. Sasuke, he whispered. Before he could react further, the tear collapsed in on itself, sealed by Shutara's threading technique. The golden threads tightened, stitching reality back together with precise spiritual energy. That was abrupt. Kiryu observed. Naruto stared at the space where the tear had been, conflicting emotions evident on his face. I think my friend was searching for me. Shutara studied him carefully. These attempts to force the barriers will only accelerate the deterioration. If your allies continue, they may cause exactly what they're trying to prevent. I need to contact them somehow, Naruto said, determination hardening his features. Let them know I'm alright and working on a solution. Perhaps, Shutara conceded, surprising both Naruto and Kiryu with her willingness to consider the idea. But first, you must complete your training. Understanding the nature of these tears is crucial to communicating across them safely. Naruto nodded reluctantly. How long will training take? For a normal soul, decades. Shutara's eyes held a hint of challenge. But you're not normal, are you, Naruto Uzumaki? He met her gaze directly. No, I'm not, and I'm a quick learner. We shall see. She turned to leave, then added, almost as an afterthought, your first lesson begins at dawn. Don't be late. As she walked away, Kiryu chuckled softly. I haven't seen Senjumaru take such interest in anyone in centuries. You've made quite an impression, Naruto-kun. Is that good or bad? He asked warily. Kiryu's smile was enigmatic. That depends entirely on what you make of it. Dawn in the royal realm brought a light unlike anything Naruto had experienced, purer somehow, as if reality itself were more concentrated. He arrived at the designated training ground wearing his new Royal Guard uniform, which fit perfectly and moved with him as if it were a second skin. Shutara was already waiting, standing perfectly still in the center of a vast courtyard. Her eyes were closed, mechanical arms extended outward, perfectly balanced. Naruto approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her meditation. To his surprise, she spoke without opening her eyes. You're 3 minutes early. Commendable. I've learned the hard way what happens when you're late to training, Naruto replied, remembering Kakashi's unique punishments. Shutara opened her eyes, regarding him with that same analytical intensity. Today, we begin with fundamentals. Before you can understand dimensional tiers, you must understand the composition of our world. What followed was the most comprehensive lesson on spiritual physics Naruto had ever received. Shutara explained the nature of reishi, the spiritual particles at composed soul society, and how they differed from the physical matter of the living world. In your world, chakra is a fusion of physical and spiritual energy, she noted as they walked through a demonstration area where various forms of spiritual manifestation were visible. Here, all power derives from spiritual energy alone. The difference is crucial. Naruto absorbed the information with surprising aptitude, drawing parallels to concepts he already understood. It's like Sage Mode in reverse. Instead of balancing natural energy with chakra, you're balancing different types of spiritual energy. Shutara paused, genuinely intrigued by his observation. An apt comparison. Your intuitive understanding is unexpected. People tend to underestimate me, Naruto said with a shrug. I'm used to it. I don't underestimate you, Naruto Uzumaki, she replied coolly. I simply recognize that our worlds operate on different principles. Your adaptability is noteworthy. The lesson continued. As Shutara demonstrated how soul reapers channeled their spiritual pressure through Zanpakuto, the soul-cutting swords that were extensions of their own souls. Each Zanpakuto has a unique spirit, she explained. A manifestation of the wielder's inner power. Like Kurama, Naruto observed. Similar, yet distinct. Your tailed beast is a separate entity that chose to ally with you. A Zanpakuto's spirit is born from the Soul Reaper's own soul. Naruto considered this. So I probably can't develop a Zanpakuto. Your spiritual structure is too different, she confirmed. However, she studied him thoughtfully. Your ability to manifest chakra constructs serves a similar function. Your Rasengan technique channels spiritual energy in a way not unlike our Kido. The training intensified as they moved from theory to practice. Shutara tested Naruto's ability to sense and manipulate different forms of spiritual energy, pushing him to adapt his techniques to Soul Society's unique environment. To her carefully concealed surprise, he excelled. His shadow clones proved particularly effective for accelerated learning, each clone gaining experience that transferred back to the original when dispelled. Fascinating, she murmured as Naruto successfully modified his Rasengan to incorporate pure reishi, creating a hybrid technique that glowed with unusual brilliance. You're integrating ritual principles that take most Soul Reapers decades to master. Naruto wiped sweat from his brow, grinning despite his exhaustion. Like I said, I'm a quick learner. Their training session was interrupted by the arrival of Utsunamiya. His usual flamboyant personality subdued by obvious concern. Hate to break up the study date, he said, but we've got a situation. Multiple tears forming simultaneously across Soul Society. Bigger than anything we've seen yet. Shutara's expression remained impassive, but Naruto could sense her tension. The deterioration is accelerating. Looks that way, Etsu confirmed. Ikebe wants everyone ready to deploy. Including our newest recruit. He nodded toward Naruto. He's not ready, Shutara stated flatly. I am, Naruto countered. You've seen what I can do. Her mechanical arms extended slightly in a gesture of frustration. You've had 1 day of training. These tears could manifest any number of interdimensional threats. Then I'll adapt, Naruto said confidently. It's what I do best. Etsu grinned. Kid's got spirit. Besides, Shutara-chan, weren't you the one who suggested his unique abilities might be key to understanding these tears? She fixed him with a cold stare at the familiar honorific, but didn't contradict him. After a moment's consideration, she nodded curtly. Very well, but you will follow my instructions precisely, Uzumaki. No improvisations. Naruto's expression grew serious. Understood. As they prepared to depart, Shutara added quietly, and, be careful. These tears are becoming increasingly unstable. We cannot predict what might emerge from them. Something in her tone, a subtle shift from clinical detachment to genuine concern, caught Naruto's attention. He offered her a reassuring smile. Don't worry, we've got this. For the briefest moment, something almost like surprise flickered across her features before her composure returned. Confidence is admirable, overconfidence is fatal. Remember that distinction. The situation in Soul Society was chaotic when they arrived. Multiple dimensional tiers had formed throughout the Seraite and Rukongai, each pulsing with unstable energy. Soul Reapers from the 13 Court Guard squad struggled to contain the smaller ruptures, but the larger ones defied their efforts. Ikebe met the assembled Royal Guard at the central coordination point. His usually jovial demeanor replaced with grim focus. We've identified 27 major tiers and countless minor ones, he reported. They appear to be following a pattern, forming along spiritua ley lines that connect to the dimensional boundary. A deliberate attack, Tenjiro concluded. Or a systematic search, Naruto suggested, earning curious looks from the others. If someone's looking for me, they might be probing different areas, trying to detect my chakra signature. Ikebe stroked his beard thoughtfully. That would explain the pattern. Each new tear forms closer to your last known location. Then I should be the one to confront whoever's causing this, Naruto said firmly. If it's my friends, I can explain the situation and get them to stop. If it's enemies, his expression hardened. I'll handle them. Too risky, Shutara interjected. If you approach a tier, your unique spiritual signature might cause it to expand uncontrollably. Or stabilize it, Kiryu countered. We won't know until we try. A massive spiritual pressure suddenly descended upon them, familiar to Naruto but alien to Soul Society. The largest tear yet split the sky above the Seraite, a perfect circle of distorted space through which a single figure emerged. Sasuke, Naruto whispered, recognizing the unmistakable chakra of his closest friend. Sasuke Uchiha hovered above the Seraite, his Rinnegan eye scanning the unfamiliar world with piercing intensity. His black cloak billowed around him as he descended slowly, ignoring the Soul Reapers who had gathered with drawn Zanpakuto. They'll attack him, Naruto realized aloud, already moving. I need to reach him first. Shutara caught his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Wait, we don't know what effect your proximity to an active tear will have. I can't just let them attack him. Naruto pulled away. He's my friend, and he doesn't understand what's happening here. Before she could protest further, Naruto activated Six Paths Sage Mode. His body glowing with golden chakra as he launched himself toward Sasuke with blinding speed. Below, Captain Commander Kiraku had already ordered his forces to stand by rather than engage the newcomer directly. Let's see what he wants first, he cautioned. He appears to be searching for something, or someone. Sasuke spotted Naruto's approaching form and immediately halted his descent. Recognition evident in his mismatched eyes. Naruto. They met mid-air, Naruto stopping a cautious distance from his friend. Sasuke, what are you doing here? Looking for you, obviously. Sasuke's gaze traveled over Naruto's royal guard uniform with mild surprise. You've been missing for days. The entire village is searching. Days. Naruto blinked in confusion. I've only been here one day. Time flows differently between dimensions, came Shutara's voice as she appeared beside them, her movement so swift neither shinobi had sensed her approach. A common characteristic of separate realities. Sasuke's hand moved instinctively toward his sword, but Naruto gestured for him to stand down. It's okay. This is Senjumaru Shutara of the Royal Guard. They've been helping me understand what's happening with these dimensional tiers. Sasuke relaxed marginally, studying the woman with cautious respect. And what is happening, exactly? Before Shutara could answer, the tear through which Sasuke had emerged pulsed violently. Expanding outward, the distortion rippled through the air, sending waves of disruption across the Seraite. The boundary is destabilizing, Shutara observed with clinical precision. Your method of crossing dimensions is accelerating the deterioration, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke frowned. My Rinnegan allows me to create stable portals between dimensions. This shouldn't be happening. Under normal circumstances, perhaps, Shutara agreed. But these aren't normal circumstances. The dimensional boundaries between our worlds are already compromised. Naruto looked between them, his mind racing. Sasuke, you need to close that portal now. We can figure out a safer way to communicate later. Sasuke nodded, raising his hand toward the tier. His Rinnegan glowed as he attempted to manipulate the dimensional opening he'd created. To his visible surprise, the tear resisted his control, pulsing with chaotic energy that seemed to feed on his attempts to close it. Something's wrong, he muttered, concentrating harder. It's almost as if something else is keeping it open, Shutara finished, her mechanical arms extending in a complex pattern as she analyzed the tier. This isn't just your portal anymore. It's connected to the other tiers, part of a growing network. The sky above them darkened as more tiers began to form, connecting to Sasuke's initial portal-like branches from a tree. Each new tear pulsed with the same unstable energy, creating a web of dimensional fractures. This is bad, Naruto said unnecessarily. Indeed, Shutara agreed, her tone dry despite the gravity of the situation. Your arrival, Uchiha Sasuke, appears to have created a cascade effect. The tiers are multiplying exponentially. Below, Soul Reapers scrambled to contain the spreading distortion. Captain Kuretsuchi could be seen directing his division in taking readings, his painted face alight with scientific fascination despite the danger. Sasuke's expression remained stoic, but Naruto could sense his concern. If I can't close it, perhaps I can redirect it. Channel the instability somewhere else. No, Shutara said firmly. Redirecting the energy would only create tears elsewhere. We need to seal them properly. Then tell me how, Sasuke demanded. A distant roar interrupted their discussion, a sound Naruto recognized from his brief education on Soul Society's threats. Hollows, he identified grimly. A lot of them. Through the largest tear, massive hollow signatures were approaching, drawn to the concentration of spiritual pressure like moths to flame. The unstable dimensional boundary had weakened the separation between Hueco Mundo, the realm of hollows, and Soul Society. This is getting worse by the minute, Naruto observed. We need a plan. Shutara's eyes narrowed in thought. Your combined spiritual signatures may be the key. If you both possess powers that affect dimensions, we could stabilize the tiers long enough for you to seal them properly, Naruto finished. Catching on quickly, Sasuke nodded in agreement. It's worth trying. Shutara studied them both, calculating possibilities. The risk is considerable. If you fail, the sudden release of energy could tear the boundaries wide open permanently. And if we do nothing? Naruto countered. She didn't need to answer. The growing darkness spilling from the tears spoke volumes. Very well, she conceded. I will coordinate with the other Royal Guard members. You two focus on the primary tear, the one Uchiha Sasuke created. If we can seal that one, the others may be easier to manage. As Shutara departed to mobilize the Royal Guard, Sasuke turned to Naruto with a raised eyebrow. You seem to have adapted quickly to this strange world. Naruto shrugged, a familiar grin spreading across his features despite the dire circumstances. You know me, I make friends everywhere. Sasuke's expression softened slightly. That you do. His gaze shifted to the Royal Guard uniform Naruto wore. Though it seems you've done more than make friends here. It's complicated, Naruto admitted. I'll explain everything once we've handled this crisis. Together, they turned toward the primary dimensional tear, which had grown large enough to dominate the sky above the Seraite. Through its distorted surface, the first Manos Grande had begun to emerge, towering black figures with white masks and ominous spiritual pressure. Ready? Naruto asked, golden chakra flaring around him as he entered Six Paths Sage mode. Sasuke activated his Rinnegan fully, purple energy crackling around him. Always. They launched themselves toward the tear, two of the shinobi world's greatest powers united once more to face a threat neither had anticipated. The battle against the dimensional instability tested even the combined might of Naruto and Sasuke. As they approached the primary tear, hollows of all classifications poured through, from common hollows to Manos Grande and even several Ijuka's class Manos. Soul Reapers engaged the emerging threats while Naruto and Sasuke focused on the tear itself. Using a combination of Six Paths Sage mode and Rinnegan abilities, they attempted to stabilize the boundaries long enough for the Royal Guard to implement Shutara's sealing technique. It's resisting, Sasuke called out, his Rinnegan straining against the chaotic energy. Quote, something on the other side is pulling it open. Naruto, surrounded by the golden chakra of Kurama, pressed his hands against the distorted space. I can feel it too. Almost like a vacuum. Below, the Royal Guard had positioned themselves at strategic points around the Seraite. Shutara stood at the center, her mechanical arms extended to their fullest as golden threads manifested in complex patterns. The other guard members channeled their spiritual pressure through her network, creating a framework for the sealing technique. We need more time, Ikeeb shouted up to them. The seal requires precise alignment. Naruto gritted his teeth, pushing more chakra into his efforts. Sasuke, can you use Susanoo to help contain it? Sasuke nodded, manifesting the spectral purple warrior around himself. The ethereal construct extended its arms, helping to press the edges of the tear inward. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The tear's expansion slowed, its edges stabilizing under their combined pressure. But then a new force emerged, a presence from deep within the dimensional void that pushed back with terrifying power. Something's coming through, Naruto warned. Something big. The tear pulsed once more, then split wide open despite their efforts. From within emerged a figure Naruto recognized with a chill of dread. Not a hollow, not a shinobi, but something far worse. Tonari Otsutsuki, descendant of Kagaya and wielder of the Tenseigan, stepped through the dimensional gap. His pale features were set in cold determination, his eyes glowing with the distinctive blue-green pattern of his evolved Byakugan. Uzumaki Naruto, he greeted formally. I've found you at last. Naruto tensed, memories of their previous conflict racing through his mind. Tonari, what are you doing here? I thought you'd chosen to remain on the moon. Circumstances change, Tonari replied, his gaze traveling over the unfamiliar world around them. When the dimensional disturbances began affecting the moon's orbit, I investigated. When I sensed your chakra signature disappear from our world, I knew the phenomena were connected. Sasuke moved to Naruto's side, Susanoo still active around him. You know this guy. We've met, Naruto confirmed grimly. He's an Otsutsuki clan descendant, related to Kagaya. Shutara's voice cut through their conversation, sharp with urgency. Whatever reunion this is, it must wait. The tear is still expanding. If we don't seal it now, the consequences will be catastrophic for both worlds. Tonari turned his attention to Shutara, studying her with obvious interest. You're attempting to seal the dimensional pathways. Admirable, but futile. The barriers between our worlds are fundamentally compromised, have been since Kagaya's sealing. Then help us fix them. Naruto urged. If what you're saying is true, both our worlds are in danger. Tonari considered this, his expression unreadable. Perhaps. But first, I must understand this world and its connection to our own. The energies here are fascinating. Unlike anything in our dimension. We don't have time for scientific curiosity, Sasuke said coldly, his Susanoo's hand reaching toward Tonari threateningly. Tonari raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. You misunderstand, Uchiha. I'm not here as an enemy. I'm here because the moon, my sacred charge, is being pulled from its orbit by these dimensional disturbances. If they continue, the gravitational consequences alone will destroy the shinobi world. This revelation gave them all pause. Naruto exchanged a glance with Sasuke, then looked down at Shutara, who had been monitoring their conversation while continuing her preparations. Is that possible? Naruto called down to her. Could these tears affect something as massive as the moon? Dimensional distortion affects all aspects of reality, she confirmed. If your world's moon is particularly attuned to dimensional energies, which seems likely if this Otsutsuki has been residing there, then yes, it could be affected. Tonari nodded in satisfaction. Your friend is correct, and she appears to be implementing a sealing technique far more sophisticated than anything I've encountered. Perhaps cooperation would benefit us all. Before Naruto could respond, a massive surge of spiritual pressure erupted from the tier. Dozens of high-level hollows poured through, followed by something far more ominous, a garganta. The direct pathway to Hawako Mundo, forming alongside the existing tier. They're merging, Shutara called out in alarm. The dimensional boundaries between all three worlds are collapsing. Naruto made a split-second decision. Tonari, we need your help. Your Tenseigen might be able to stabilize the tier from our side while we work from this one. Tonari studied the chaotic dimensional energies, then nodded. Very well, Uzumaki Naruto. For the sake of the moon, I will assist you. His eyes glowed brighter as he activated the Tenseigen's full power, golden chakra mode, enveloping his body in a manner not unlike Naruto's own transformation. With three immensely powerful beings now working in concert, Naruto with Six Paths Sage Mode, Sasuke with his Rinnegan, and Toner I with the Tenseigen, the tear finally began to respond. Its wild fluctuations slowed, edges growing more defined under their combined influence. Now, Shutara, Naruto shouted. Below, Shutara's Mechan, Ikal arms moved in perfect synchronization, golden threads shooting upward to encircle the stabilized tier. The other Royal Guard members channeled their power through her network, each contributing Air unique spiritual pressure to the sealing technique. Bakudo number 99, Part 2, Benken, Royal Guard Modification, Dimensional Suture. Shutara called out, her voice echoing with authority. The golden threads tightened around the tear, spiritual fabric weaving itself into the very boundaries of reality. Where the threads connected, the dimensional distortion began to heal, edges pulling together like a wound being stitched closed. Naruto, Sasuke, and Tonari maintained their positions, using their respective powers to hold the tear stable as Shutara's technique took effect. The strain was enormous, but they persevered, understanding that failure meant catastrophe for multiple worlds. After what seemed like an eternity, the tear finally closed completely, Shutara's threads forming a complex seal over the spot where it had been. The smaller tiers throughout Soul Society followed suit, closing one by one as the network Shutara had established redistributed the sealing energy. As the last tear sealed itself, Naruto felt the strain of maintaining Six Paths Sage Mode for so long. His transformation faded as he descended slowly to the ground, joined by Sasuke and Tonari, both similarly exhausted. Shutara approached them, her normally perfect composure showing subtle signs of fatigue. The immediate crisis is averted, but these seals are temporary. The fundamental instability remains. Tonari nodded in agreement. The barriers between our worlds have been weakening for some time, since the Fourth Great Ninja War in Kagai's sealing. What we witnessed today was merely a symptom of a deeper problem. So what now? Naruto asked, looking between them. Ikeeb joined their discussion, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Now, we must understand the true nature of the Dimensiona boundaries and how they've been compromised. And for that, we need all the knowledge we can gather, from both worlds. He turned to Tonari with shrewd assessment. Your Tenseigen provides a unique perspective on dimensional energies. Would you be willing to share your knowledge with us? Tonari considered the request. If it means preserving the moon and the shinobi world, yes. But I will require access to information about this world in return. Reasonable terms, Ikeeb agreed, then looked to Sasuke. And you, Uchiha Sasuke. Your Rinnegan's dimensional abilities proved invaluable today. Asuke glanced at Naruto before answering. I came here to find Naruto and bring him home. But it seems the situation is more complicated than I anticipated. I can't leave yet, Naruto said firmly. Quote, not until we've resolved the dimensional instability. If what Tonari says is true, both our worlds are at risk. Sasuke sighed in resignation. Then I'll stay as well, temporarily. The Rinnegan may be useful in understanding these dimensional boundaries. Excellent. Aikiba's serious demeanor gave way to his more characteristic enthusiasm. It seems our royal guard has gained not one but 3 new consultants from the shinobi world. Shutara regarded the trio with measured assessment. Their knowledge and abilities will be valuable, certainly. But integrating them into our operations presents challenges. Particularly since 2 of them haven't undergone any training in Soul Society protocols. Details, Aikiba waved dismissively. You've already begun training Naruto-kun with impressive results. I'm sure you can accommodate 2 more students. Shutara's expression remained neutral, but Naruto detected a hint of exasperation in her spiritual pressure. As you wish, Commander. As the others discussed logistics, Naruto found himself studying Shutara with new appreciation. Throughout the crisis, her composure and skill had been remarkable. Without her unique threading technique, they might never have sealed the tears in time. She must have sensed his attention, because she turned to meet his gaze directly. Something on your mind, Uzumaki. I was just thinking, he said honestly, that I've never seen anyone maintain such perfect focus under pressure. Your threading technique is incredible. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at the genuine compliment. It is merely the result of centuries of practice. Still, Naruto insisted, what you did today saved both our worlds. That's worth acknowledging. She studied him for a moment longer than necessary. As if reassessing something about him. Your contribution was equally significant. Your ability to adapt to unfamiliar circumstances is remarkable. Coming from Shutara, Naruto sensed this was high praise indeed. He smiled, about to respond when Sasuke interrupted. Naruto, we need to contact Konoha. Let them know we're both alive and working on the situation. Reality reasserted itself with Sasuke's practical reminder. Naruto nodded, his expression growing serious again. You're right, but how do we send a message without creating another tear? Shutara, who had been listening to their exchange, offered an unexpected solution. There may be a way. The Okayan, the royal key, allows travel between realms without disrupting dimensional boundaries. With modification, it might allow for small-scale communication. Brilliant idea, Shutara-san. Aikiba approved heartily. Always thinking ahead, she acknowledged the compliment with a slight nod, her attention remaining on Naruto. It will require precise spiritual control and intimate knowledge of your world's energy signature. Your involvement will be essential. Whatever it takes, Naruto agreed readily. As they made their way back toward the royal realm, the sky above Soul Society gradually cleared, returning to its usual perfect blue. But Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the calm before a greater storm. That the dimensional crisis was far from over. Glancing at Shutara walking slightly ahead of him, her posture perfect and her mechanical arms now retracted, Naruto found himself wondering about the man behind the formal royal guard exterior. Throughout the chaos, she had demonstrated not just extraordinary power but also quick thinking and adaptability, qualities Naruto had always valued in his allies. There was something else too, a momentary connection when they had worked together to seal the tear, their energies synchronizing in a way that felt strangely familiar despite their fundamentally different natures. Kurama, sensing his thoughts, chuckled within him. Interesting choice for admiration, kid. I don't know what you're talking about, Naruto replied internally, though not entirely convincingly. Sure you don't, the Nine Tails responded with obvious amusement. Just remember, we still need to find our way home eventually. Home. The concept seemed suddenly more complicated than it had just days ago. Naruto glanced back at the sprawling expanse of Soul Society, then forward to where Shutara walked with measured grace, and found himself wondering exactly where that would be when this was all over. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Threads of Fate. Dawn painted the sky in impossible hues above the palace of threads. Naruto stood on the balcony, eyes closed, feeling the spiritual pressure of this strange world wash over him. After 2 weeks in Soul Society, he was beginning to distinguish individual signatures, the steady pulse of Aikibe's power, the fluctuating warmth of Kiryo's, and the precise, needle-sharp focus that was unmistakably Shutara's. "You're early again," she noted, appearing silently behind him. Naruto didn't turn, having sensed her approach. "Thought I'd get some meditation in before you run me into the ground." Since the sealing of the major tiers, Shutara had intensified his training regimen to punishing levels. Each day began before dawn and ended well after dusk, every moment dedicated to mastering the fundamentals of Soul Society's spiritual mechanics. "Your adaptation continues to exceed expectations," she admitted, joining him at the railing. Without her mechanical arms extended, she appeared almost ordinary, though Naruto had learned there was nothing ordinary about Senjumaru Shutara. "I had good teachers before you," Naruto replied, finally turning to face her. "Kakashi-sensei, Jiraiya, even Kurama. They all helped me learn to adapt." She studied him with that clinical precision he'd come to expect. "Yet none of them prepared you for interdimensional travel or the manipulation of foreign spiritual energy." "True," he conceded with a slight grin. "That's all you." Something flickered across her features, not quite a smile, but a softening of her perpetual composure. "Today's agenda has changed. Commander Hyasube has called a council meeting to discuss the stabilization project. Your presence is required." "What about Sasuke and Tonari?" "They will attend as well," she confirmed. "Their progress in understanding our world's spiritual framework has been adequate." Coming from Shutara, adequate was practically effusive praise. Naruto had noticed she held everyone, including herself, to nearly impossible standards. "I'll be ready in 5 minutes, he promised. Shutara nodded, turning to leave before pausing. "Your modified uniform is prepared. The adaptations you requested have been incorporated." Naruto brightened. "The seal integration worked." "That's great. The chakra conduits are functional." "Yes." Her tone remained neutral, but Naruto detected a hint of professional satisfaction. "Though I still maintain that standard royal guard attire would have sufficed." "Maybe," Naruto acknowledged. Combining your spirit thread with Uzumaki sealing techniques might help us understand how to permanently stabilize the dimensional boundaries." Another almost expression crossed her face. This time, Naruto would have sworn it was approval. "Perhaps," was all she said before departing, leaving Naruto to prepare for the day ahead. The Royal Guard's council chamber occupied the highest point in the Palace of Spheres. Its circular design allowing all members to face each other as equals. Today, however, the traditional arrangement had been modified to accommodate the shinobi visitors. Aikibe sat in his customary position, flanked by Kiryo and Tenjiro. Etsu lounged in his seat with characteristic irreverence, while Shutara maintained perfect posture beside him. Naruto, Sasuke, and Tonari UPIED specially prepared positions that marked them as honored guests rather than full members. "Let us begin," Aikibe announced, his jovial demeanor tempered by the seriousness of their purpose. 2 weeks since the major sealing operation, and our situation remains precarious. "Shutara, your assessment." She rose gracefully, mechanical arms extending to display a complex spiritual diagram in the center of the chamber. "The seals are holding, but degrading faster than anticipated. I project complete failure within 60 days unless we implement a permanent solution." The projection showed Soul Society at the center, with the human world, Hueco Mundo, and the shinobi world arranged in a previously unrecognized dimensional relationship. "The original balance appears to have been disrupted by 2 major events," Shutara continued. "First, the conflict your people call the Fourth Great Ninja War, which involved manipulation of fundamental dimensional boundaries." She nodded toward the shinobi. "And second, the sealing of the entity known as Kagaya Otsutsuki." Tonari leaned forward, his Tensegan inactive but still giving his eyes an otherworldly quality. "The Otsutsuki clan has always possessed unique abilities to traverse dimensions. Kagaya's sealing created a power vacuum that destabilized the natural order. Furthermore," Sasuke added, his expression characteristically severe, "our world has experienced increasing chakra instability since the war. Areas of unusually concentrated nature energy, spontaneous activation of dormant bloodlines, even weather pattern disruptions. Naruto nodded in confirmation. Kakashi-sensei had been sending teams to investigate these anomalies for months before I got pulled through. Ikebe stroked his beard thoughtfully. So both our worlds were already experiencing symptoms before the tears became visible. This suggests a deeper, structural problem. Precisely, Shutara agreed. The dimensional barriers aren't simply damaged, they're fundamentally altered. The question is whether this change is natural evolution or deliberate sabotage. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as each person considered the implications. If someone is manipulating these changes, Tenjiro said finally, they possess power rivaling the Soul King himself. Or they're exploiting the existing instability, Etsu suggested, using the cracks that are already there to pry things further apart. Quote, Kiryu, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. What about the reishi composition of the tears themselves? My analysis showed unusual harmonics, almost like a resonance pattern. Like they're responding to a specific frequency, Naruto realized, earning an approving glance from Shutara. Yes, she confirmed, which suggests they could be controlled, or at least influenced, by someone with the correct spiritual alignment. All eyes turned to Naruto, whose unique chakra signature had demonstrated unusual interactions with the dimensional tears from the beginning. You're thinking I could help stabilize them, he surmised. Or potentially close them permanently, Shutara corrected. Your hybrid spiritual energy, chakra combined with the natural energy you call sage mode, resonates with the tear frequencies in a way neither our spiritual pressure nor conventional chakra alone can achieve. Sasuke exchanged a meaningful look with Naruto. That would explain why the tears first appeared near you, and why that boundary entity targeted you specifically. I've been monitoring Uzumaki's training, Shutara continued. His rate of adaptation to Soul S. Oshity's spiritual environment is unprecedented. If we can refine his technique to specifically address dimensional boundaries, we may have our solution. Ikebe nodded enthusiastically. Excellent work, Shutara. Always 10 steps ahead of the rest of us. She acknowledged the compliment with a slight inclination of her head. There's one problem, Naruto pointed out. I still don't fully understand how Soul Society's spiritual pressure differs from chakra at a fundamental level. Without that understanding, I might make things worse instead of better. Tonari, who had been silent during most of the exchange, unexpectedly offered a solution. Perhaps I can assist. The Tensegan allows me to perceive dimensional layers in their purest form. If I observe while Uzumaki attempts to manipulate the barriers, I could provide real-time guidance. A practical approach, Shutara agreed, something like professional respect entering her tone. Combined with my threading technique, we could create a controlled environment for experimentation. Then it's settled, Ikebe declared with his characteristic enthusiasm. Shutara will continue Naruto-kun's training with specific focus on dimensional barrier manipulation. With assistance from our Otsutsuki friend. Sasuke cleared his throat. What about communication with our world? The modified Okayan messaging system has limitations, and Konoha grows increasingly concerned. I've been refining the transmission process, Shutara replied. With Uchiha's Rinnegan as a focusing mechanism, we should be able to establish more stable communication within the week. The meeting continued, delving into technical details of their approach. Throughout the discussion, Naruto found himself repeatedly glancing at Shutara. Despite her formal demeanor, there was something fascinating about the way her mind worked, precise, analytical, yet creative in ways that reminded him of Shikamaru at his best. She caught his gaze once, raising an eyebrow slightly in silent question. Naruto simply nodded in appreciation of her latest point, earning what might have been the ghost of a smile before her attention returned to the matter at hand. Again, Shutara instructed, her voice betraying no fatigue despite the hours they'd been training. Naruto nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he focused on the miniature dimensional tear suspended between them. Shutara had created it using a modified version of her threading technique, a controlled environment to practice manipulation without risking larger disturbances. Remember, she said, mechanical arms weaving golden threads around the tear's perimeter. The boundary responds to intent as much as technique. You must visualize the layers sealing themselves, not simply force them closed. Naruto took a deep breath, centering himself. 2 weeks of intensive training had taught him that Soul Society's spiritual mechanics, while different from chakra, responded to similar principles of visualization and will. He extended his hands, chakra glowing around them as he carefully integrated natural energy in precise proportions. The tear flickered, its edges growing more defined as his hybrid energy interacted with the dimensional boundary. Better, Shutara observed, though her tone remained clinical. Now maintain that resonance while I introduce destabilizing factors. Her threads pulsed with spiritual pressure, deliberately creating interference patterns that mimic the chaotic energies of naturally occurring tears. The miniature tear began to fluctuate wildly, expanding and contracting in rapid succession. Naruto adjusted instinctively, altering his chakra flow to counter each fluctuation. For a moment, perfect synchronization seemed within reach, the tear stabilizing under their combined influence. Then a surge of unexpected energy disrupted his concentration. The tear expanded suddenly, releasing a pulse of dimensional energy that knocked Naruto backward. He caught himself before hitting the ground, landing in a crouch as the tear collapsed in on itself. You lost focus, Shutara noted, retracting her threads. Something interfered, Naruto replied, rising to his feet. Did you feel that? It was like a ripple from somewhere else. Shutara's expression sharpened with interest. Describe it precisely. Like an echo, Naruto tried to explain, frustrated by the limitations of language. As if something large disturbed the dimensional fabric elsewhere, and we felt the aftershocks. Before she could respond, a hell butterfly fluttered into the training chamber, landing delicately on Shutara's outstretched finger. She listened to its message, her expression revealing nothing. Another tear has formed in the Rukongai, she informed him, already moving toward the exit. Larger than any we've seen since the major sealing operation. Naruto fell into step beside her. The ripple I felt, could it be connected? Almost certainly, she confirmed. Your sensitivity to dimensional disturbances has been increasing with training. You likely sensed its formation before the official detection. They moved swiftly through the palace of threads, Shutara's pace brisk but measured. As they reached the central courtyard, Naruto noticed she was studying him with that analytical gaze. What? He asked. Your progress exceeds all projected models, she stated matter-of-factly. At this rate of adaptation, you'll achieve functional understanding of Soul Society's spiritual mechanics within months rather than decades. Coming from Shutara, this was extraordinary praise. Yuto grinned despite the seriousness of their situation. I told you I'm a quick learner. So it seems. Something almost like amusement flickered in her eyes. Though your technique remains unrefined. Hey, I'm working on it. Indeed you are, she acknowledged, the faintest trace of approval warming her tone. Your determination is commendable. Before Naruto could respond to this unexpected compliment, Tonari appeared. His expression grave. You've sensed it as well? He asked without preamble. Shutara nodded. We're proceeding to the tear location now. Your Tenseigans' perceptual abilities would be useful. Of course. Tonari fell into step beside them, his pale eyes fixed on Naruto. Your spiritual pressure has changed, Uzumaki. It's becoming more integrated. Naruto glanced at him in surprise. What do you mean? Your chakra signature previously maintained clear separation between your natural energy and the Nine Tails influence. Now the boundaries are blurring, not unlike the dimensional tiers themselves. This observation clearly interested Shutara, whose attention sharpened. Is this integration voluntary? I'm not doing it consciously, Naruto admitted. But Ama and I have been working together more closely to understand Soul Society's spiritual structure. It's a natural evolution, Kurama commented within him. This world's environment accelerates the harmonization process. It might actually be beneficial. Kurama thinks it's helping us adapt, Naruto relayed. Shutara considered this as they reached the transportation point. Spiritual adaptation often manifests before conscious mastery. Your instincts may be developing solutions your mind hasn't yet formalized. Coming from anyone else, this might have sounded like mystical nonsense. From Shutara's precisely analytical perspective, it was simply an observation of empirical reality. We should hurry, Tonari interjected. The dimensional resonance is intensifying. as if confirming his words. The air around them seemed to vibrate with subtle tension, the spiritual equivalent of distant thunder. Agreed, Shutara said, activating the transportation mechanism. The others will meet us there. The tear had formed in one of the outermost districts of the Rukongai, far from the Seraite's protective influence. Unlike previous tears, which appeared as jagged wounds in reality, this one was perfectly circular, almost artificially so. This was created deliberately, Tonari observed immediately, his Tensegan active as he studied the anomaly. The spiritual pressure is too uniform for a natural occurrence. Naruto extended his senses, now familiar enough with Soul Society's environment to detect the subtle differences. It feels controlled, not chaotic like the others. Shutara's mechanical arms extended fully, golden threads weaving intricate patterns as she analyzed the tear's composition. The reishi structure has been stabilized from the other side. Someone is maintaining this opening intentionally. Sasuke appeared via flash step, having arrived separately. His Rinnegan eye focused on the tear with intense scrutiny. It's connected to our world. I can sense familiar chakra signatures. Friendly? Naruto asked hopefully. Before Sasuke could answer, a figure emerged from the tear, not stepping through so much as materializing from its center. Tall and lean with pale skin and long dark hair. He wore a modified shinobi uniform bearing the insignia of Otogaku. Orochimaru, Sasuke identified, his hand moving instinctively to his sword. The Sannin smiled, his Pentine eyes taking in the gathering with obvious curiosity. What interesting company you're keeping these days, Sasuke-kun, Naruto-kun. Naruto tensed, ready for combat but restraining himself. How did you find this place? Orochimaru, scientific curiosity, of course. The Sannin gestured elegantly to the dimensional tear behind him. These fascinating anomalies have been appearing throughout our world. When I learned that both the future Hokage and the last Uchiha had disappeared while investigating one, well, my interest was piqued. His gaze traveled over Shutara and Tonari with undisguised scientific interest. And what remarkable specimens have discovered. This world's spiritual composition is unlike anything in our dimensional spectrum. Shutara stepped forward, her expression cold. You're destabilizing the dimensional boundaries with your experiments. Each artificial tear accelerates the deterioration process. Orochimaru tilted his head slightly, studying her with renewed focus. Fascinating. You've developed techniques to manipulate dimensional fabric directly. Not through chakra or ninjutsu, but through some form of pure spiritual energy. Your observations, while accurate, are irrelevant. Shutara replied. This tear must be closed immediately. Must it? Orochimaru's smile widened. I've only just begun to explore the possibilities. A world of souls, existing parallel to our own. The research opportunities are endless. Sasuke stepped forward, Sharingan active alongside his Rinnegan. This isn't a research expedition, Orochimaru. The dimensional barriers are failing. If they collapse completely, both worlds face catastrophe. Always so dramatic, Sasuke-kun. Orochimaru sighed theatrically. I'm well aware of the risks. In fact, I've been monitoring the deterioration patterns for months. That's how I determined the precise resonance frequency needed to create stable passages. This caught Shutara's attention. You've identified the resonance patterns. Indeed. Orochimaru's expression grew more serious. Though I suspect we've approached the problem from opposite directions. You're trying to seal the tears, while I've been working to stabilize them. To what end? Tonari asked, speaking for the first time. Orochimaru studied the Otsutsuki with obvious interest. Another descendant of Kagaya. How unexpected. He returned his attention to the group. To answer your question. Knowledge. These dimensional boundaries have always existed, but never been properly studied. The current instability presents a unique opportunity. At the cost of both worlds' safety, Naruto pointed out. A calculated risk, Orochimaru countered. But one that may yield solutions neither side could develop independently. For instance, he produced a small scroll from within his robes. I've mapped the complete resonance patterns of 17 different tiers. This data might help your sealing efforts rather than hinder them. Shutara's eyes narrowed in suspicion. You offer assistance freely. Hardly. Orochimaru chuckled. I propose an exchange. My resonance data for information about your world's spiritual mechanics, particularly your fascinating threading technique. Quote, Naruto glanced at Shutara, recognizing the caution in her posture. Even reformed, Orochimaru remained fundamentally unpredictable. Such an exchange requires authorization beyond my authority, she stated carefully. Commander Hyasube must be consulted. Of course. Orochimaru gave a slight bow that somehow managed to convey mockery despite its formal correctness. I'm nothing if not patient. Shall we say, 1 day for your deliberations. I'll maintain this tear until then, stable and harmless, I assure you. Before anyone could object, he stepped backward into the tear, his form dissolving into its shimmering surface. The tear remained, perfectly circular and unnaturally stable. Can we trust him? Tonari asked into the silence that followed. No, Sasuke replied immediately. But his scientific interest is genuine. If he believes cooperation serves his research better than conflict, he'll keep his word, temporarily. Shutara's mechanical arms retracted as she considered their options. His resonance data would be valuable if authentic. Our understanding of the tear frequencies remains incomplete. But trading Soul Society secrets to Orochimaru. Naruto shook his head. That's playing with fire. Indeed. Shutara turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Which is why we must develop an alternative within the time he's given us. What do you mean? Naruto asked. If we can determine the resonance patterns independently, his leverage disappears. Her eyes held an intensity that Naruto had come to recognize as her problem-solving focus. Your sensitivity to the tears, combined with Uchiha's Rinnegan and Otsutsuki's Tenseigen, might allow us to analyze this tear without Orochimaru's data. Sasuke nodded in understanding. A three-pronged approach. My Rinnegan can perceive the dimensional pathways, Tonari's Tenseigen can identify the energy flows, and Naruto's sage abilities can sense the natural balance points. Precisely, Shutara confirmed. We have 24 hours. Let's not waste them. As the others began preliminary analysis, Naruto found himself watching Shutara. Something about Orochimaru's appearance had affected her, though she hid it well beneath her perfect composure. You okay? He asked quietly, moving to her side. She glanced at him, the faintest hint of surprise in her eyes. Why wouldn't I be? Quote, just seemed like something about Orochimaru bothered you. Beyond the obvious, I mean. Shutara was silent for a moment, her gaze returning to the tear. His spiritual composition is unusual. Modified extensively, yet still fundamentally human. It reminded me of certain experiments from Soul Society's past. Not good ones, I'm guessing. No, she confirmed, her voice taking on a rare edge. Not good ones. Naruto sensed there was more to this story, perhaps something personal, but knew better than to press. Instead, he simply nodded. Well, we'll figure this out without his help. I promise. Something in her expression softened almost imperceptibly. Such confidence. It's worked for me so far, he replied with a slight grin. To his surprise, this earned what might almost have been a SM. Eel, the corners of her mouth turning up slightly before her composure reasserted itself. Then let us hope your streak continues, Uzumaki Naruto. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of intensive work. Shutara had converted a section of the Palace of Threads into a specialized analysis chamber, where Naruto, Sasuke, and Tonari took turns examining the tear's structure under her guidance. Sasuke's Rinnegan provided crucial insights into the dimensional pathways connecting the tear to the shinobi world. Tonari's Tenseigen identified the specific energy currents maintaining its stability. Naruto's Sage Mode, enhanced by his growing familiarity with Soul Society's spiritual environment, allowed him to sense the natural resonance points where the tear could be influenced most effectively. Throughout it all, Shutara worked tirelessly, her threading technique translating their observations into a comprehensive model of the tear's structure. Her mechanical arms moved continuously, weaving golden threads into increasingly complex patterns that mapped the dimensional frequencies with extraordinary precision. The model is nearly complete, she announced, her voice betraying only the slightest fatigue after hours of uninterrupted work. Uzumaki, I need one final reading from the central convergence point. Naruto nodded, activating Sage Mode once more. Dark circles had formed his eyes from sustained concentration, but his determination remained undiminished. Ready when you are, he confirmed. Shutara directed her threads toward the heart of the tear's representation, see. Reading a focal point for Naruto's analysis. Focus on the harmonic resonance between the natural energy of your world and the spiritual pressure of ours. The connection point should manifest as a distinct frequency. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his senses through the model. The fatigue of the past day faded as he immersed himself in the pure sensory experience, following the golden threads Shutara had woven to guide him. At the center of the model, he found what they were seeking, a perfect tone, like a musical note that existed beyond sound. The resonance point where both worlds' energies achieved natural harmony. "I've got it," he murmured, careful not to break his concentration. "It's like a perfect balance point. Not trying to separate or merge, just coexisting. Can you match it?" Shutara asked, her voice uncharacteristically gentle, as if to avoid disrupting his focus. Naruto adjusted his chakra flow, carefully balancing his own energy, Kurama's influence, and the natural energy he gathered through sage mode. The combination shifted and changed until suddenly, perfect alignment. The model glowed with golden light, the resonance pattern stabilizing throughout its structure. "That's it," Tonari exclaimed, his Tensegan perceiving the success before the others could confirm it. "The pattern is complete." Shutara's threads moved swiftly, capturing and preserving T resonance signature Naruto had established. "Well done," she said simply, though the words carried genuine approval. Naruto released sage mode, the strain of such precise control finally catching up with him. He swayed slightly on his feet, only to find one of Shutara's mechanical arms steadying him with surprising gentleness. "You need rest," she observed. "I'm fine," he insisted, though the exhaustion was evident in his voice. "Did we get what we needed?" "Yes." Shutara's expression held something that might have been concern beneath her composed exterior. "The resonance pattern is fully mapped. We no longer require Orochimaru's data." "Good." Naruto managed a tired smile. "Told you we could do it." "So you did," she acknowledged, her voice softening slightly. "Your confidence was not misplaced." Before he could respond, the chamber door slid open to reveal Ikebe, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "There's been a development," he announced without preamble. "Central 46 has convened an emergency session regarding Naruto-kun's position in the Royal Guard." Naruto straightened, fatigue temporarily forgotten. "What? Why?" "Political maneuvering," Ikebe explained with a sigh. "The noble families have been lobbying against your appointment since it was announced. With Orochimaru's appearance, they've found new ammunition for their arguments. They claim an outsider cannot be trusted with Royal Guard authority when other outsiders pose potential threats," Shutara surmised, her tone cooling noticeably. "Precisely." Ikebe nodded grimly. "They're demanding your immediate removal and return to the shinobi world, along with Uchiha and Otsutsuki." Naruto felt a surge of frustration. After weeks of training and progress, after proving his commitment repeatedly, he was still viewed with suspicion by Soul Society's governing powers. "What does this mean for our work with the dimensional tiers?" Sasuke asked pragmatically. "If Central 46 prevails, all cross-dimensional cooperation would be severed." Ikebe explained. "They propose sealing all tiers permanently, regardless of the consequences to your world." "That's insane," Naruto protested. "The dimensional instability affects both sides. Cutting off communication won't solve anything." Shutara's expression remained carefully neutral, but Naruto sensed her own frustration in the subtle tension of her spiritual pressure. "What does the Soul King say to this proposal?" "That's the one fortunate aspect," Ikebe replied, his expression lightening slightly. "The Soul King has requested direct testimony Fr. Naruto-kun before any decision is made." Tonari, who had been silently observing, raised an eyebrow. "This Soul King, they can overrule your governing body." "The Soul King is the linchpin of reality itself," Shutara explained, her tone taking on a reverential quality unusual for her practical nature. "Central 46 administers Soul Society in his name, but they do not command him." Naruto absorbed this, understanding the significance. "So I'll have a chance to explain our progress. To make them understand why cooperation is essential." "Yes," Ikebe confirmed. "Though I should warn you, dire court audiences with the Soul King are exceedingly rare. Even many Royal Guard members have never spoken directly with him." Naruto glanced at Shutara, whose expression had become unreadable. "Will you be there?" he asked her. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise at being specifically included in his concerns. As your mentor in Soul Society matters, my presence would be appropriate, she replied carefully. Good, Naruto said with genuine relief. I could use your help explaining the technical aspects of our work. Ike watched this exchange with barely concealed interest. The audience is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Until then, I suggest you all rest. Particularly you, Naruto-kun, you look ready to collapse. I'm fine, Naruto insisted, though even as he spoke, the exhaustion of he past days' intensive work washed over him in an undeniable wave. You're not, Shutara contradicted flatly. Your spiritual pressure is severely depleted from sustained analysis. Rest is not optional, it's necessary. Her tone brooked no argument, and truth be told, Naruto had no energy left to protest. All right, he conceded. Wake me if anything changes with Orochimaru's tear. As the others dispersed to prepare for tomorrow's crucial meeting, Shutara remained behind, her attention returning to the resonance model they had created. Naruto paused at the doorway, watching her for a moment. You should rest too, you know, he said quietly. She glanced up, seemingly surprised he was still there. I have preparations to complete for tomorrow's audience. They can wait a few hours, Naruto countered. You've been working non-stop too. A hint of something like amusement touched her features. Are you presuming to give orders to a royal guard captain, Uzumaki? Not orders, he clarified with a tired smile. Just friendly advice. Friendly, she repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar concept. After a moment, she inclined her head slightly. Your concern is noted. It wasn't agreement, but Naruto recognized it as the closest he was likely to get. With a final nod, he departed, leaving Shutara alone with her thoughts and the golden threads that mapped their shared discovery. Soul King's realm existed beyond even the royal palace, a space so sacred few souls ever witnessed it directly. As Naruto followed Shutara through crystalline corridors that seemed to extend into infinity, he felt the weight of ancient spiritual pressure unlike anything he had experienced. Remember the protocols we discussed, Shutara reminded him, her voice low. Address the Soul King only when directly questioned. Maintain respectful posture. Do not attempt to approach the throne. Naruto nodded, unusually solemn. Even his characteristic confidence had been tempered by the sheer gravity of this audience. He wore his royal guard uniform, meticulously prepared by Shutara herself, with none of the customizations or informality he typically preferred. Will he actually speak? Naruto asked hesitantly. From what little he had gathered, the Soul King existed in a state beyond conventional interaction. In a manner, Shutara replied enigmatically. You will understand when the moment arrives. They reached a vast doorway that seemed to be composed of light rather than physical matter. Shutara paused, turning to face Naruto directly. This audience is unprecedented, she said, her tone more personal than he had ever heard from her. No outsider has stood before the Soul King in my lifetime, and my lifetime spans millennia. Naruto met her gaze steadily. I understand the responsibility. Do you? Something in her expression softened. This isn't merely about your position or even our work with the dimensional tiers. The Soul King sees beyond immediate concerns to the fabric of reality itself. Whatever transpires in this audience will have consequences beyond our current understanding. For the first time, Naruto glimpsed something beneath Shutara's perfect composure, EPTH of feelings she kept carefully guarded. Whether concern, uncertainty, or something else entirely, he couldn't say. I'll speak honestly, he promised. That's all I know how to do. She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. Perhaps that's what is needed. With graceful precision, she turned and gestured toward the doorway. It is time. The portal of light parted as they approached, revealing a chamber that defied conventional understanding of space. It seemed simultaneously vast enough to contain galaxies and intimate enough to feel the subtle movements of air from their breathing. At its center floated a crystalline structure that Naruto initially mistook for a throne. As his eyes adjusted to the otherworldly light, he realized it was actually a containment system of extraordinary complexity. Within it hovered a figure, or perhaps more accurately, the suggestion of a figure, composed of pure spiritual energy so concentrated it appeared almost solid. This, he understood immediately, was the Soul King. not a ruler in the conventional sense, but a fundamental force given consciousness and form. Around the crystalline structure stood representatives of Central 46, their faces obscured by traditional masks. Ikebe stood to one side, his usual jovial expression replaced by formal solemnity. "Approach," came a voice that wasn't quite a voice, more a concept forming directly in Naruto's mind. Following Shutara's lead, Naruto moved forward until they stood at the prescribed distance from the crystal. He bowed deeply, feeling the Soul King's attention focus on him within. Intensity that seemed to peer into his very essence. "Uzumaki Naruto," the non-voice continued. "You exist outside the natural order of our world, yet within it simultaneously." "Explain." Naruto straightened, fighting the urge to fidget under such profound scrutiny. "I came through a dimensional tear by accident," he began, keeping his voice respectful but clear. "Since then, I've been working with the Royal Guard to understand and repair the barriers between our worlds. Your presence accelerates the deterioration," observed one of the Central 46 representatives, tone accusatory. "Your unique, spiritual composition acts as a catalyst for dimensional instability." Before Naruto could defend himself, Shutara spoke, her voice perfectly modulated. "With respect, Honorable Elder, that assessment is incomplete. While Uzumaki's initial arrival did correspond with increased tier activity, our research indicates his hybrid spiritual energy may be essential to permanent stabilization." "Convenience," another elder scoffed. "The Royal Guard grows fond of their unprecedented sixth member and finds justification for his continued presence." Naruto felt a flare of indignation, but controlled it carefully. Losing his temper here would only confirm their suspicions about his unsuitability. "I understand your concerns," he said instead, addressing the Central 46 representatives directly. "In your position, I'd be suspicious too. But the dimensional tiers threaten both our worlds. Working together isn't just helpful, it's necessary." "Bold claims from an outsider with limited understanding of our realm," a third elder commented. "Perhaps," Naruto acknowledged, "but I'm learning. And what I've learned makes me certain that sealing all tiers permanently without addressing the underlying instability would be disastrous." The Soul King's attention shifted subtly, focusing more intently on Naruto. "You speak with conviction beyond your experience. Why?" The direct question caught Naruto off guard, but he answered honestly. "Because I've seen what happens when people refuse to cooperate out of fear or pride. In my world, that kind of thinking led to centuries of war and suffering until we finally learned to work together." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "The dimensional boundaries aren't just separating our worlds, they're connecting them too. Like threads in a fabric," he added, glancing briefly at Shutara. "If we try to sever those connections forcibly, we might tear the entire fabric apart." A ripple of something like approval emanated from the Soul King's crystalline enclosure. An apt metaphor for one so young. Captain Shutara's influence, perhaps. Shutara inclined her head slightly. "Uzumaki has proven an exceptional student, though the insight is his own." The Soul King's attention expanded, encompassing both Naruto and Shutara simultaneously. "Show me what you have discovered together." Understanding the request immediately, Shutara extended her mechanical arms. Golden threads materializing to create a miniature version of their resonance model in the chamber's center. Naruto instinctively complemented her demonstration, channeling his unique chakra to illuminate the key resonance points they had identified. The model glowed with combined energy, Shutara's precise spiritual threads intertwined with Naruto's harmonized chakra, creating a perfect presentation of the dimensional boundaries in their current state. Central 46's representatives murmured among themselves, clearly impressed despite their reservations. Ikebe watched with poorly concealed pride, while the Soul King's attention focused intently on the demonstration. "Fascinating," came the non-voice after a moment of observation. "Two fundamentally different approaches to spiritual energy, yet achieving perfect synchronization. Perhaps this is the solution we seek." "With respect, Soul King," one of the elders interjected, "a temporary alignment in controlled conditions does not guarantee success against the larger deterioration." "True," the Soul King acknowledged. "But it offers possibility where none existed before." His focus returned to Naruto. "You wish to remain in Soul Society, Uzumaki Naruto?" The direct question demanded equally direct honesty. I came here by accident and initially just wanted to go home, Naruto admitted. But now I understand that fixing the dimensional boundaries has to come first. If staying here as part of the Royal Guard helps achieve that, then yes, I want to remain, at least until our work is complete. The Soul King seemed to consider this, his presence shifting subtly within the crystal. And you, Captain Shutara, you have mentored this outsider, integrated him into your sacred duties. What say you of his continued presence? Shutara's composure remained perfect, but Naruto sensed a slight hesitation in her spiritual pressure, barely perceptible, yet unmistakably there. Uzumaki Naruto possesses qualities valuable to our current crisis, she began formally. His adaptability, unique spiritual composition, and innovative perspective have advanced our understanding of the dimensional boundaries significantly. She paused, then added with uncharacteristic directness, his presence has proven beneficial to Soul Society. I recommend his temporary appointment to the Royal Guard be maintained. Something like amusement emanated from the Soul King. A practical assessment, as expected from you, Captain. Yet I sense there is more you have not articulated. For the briefest moment, Shutara's perfect composure wavered, a flicker of something Naruto couldn't quite identify crossing her features before disappearing behind her usual mask of control. Personal observations beyond professional assessment would be inappropriate in this forum. She replied carefully. Perhaps, the Soul King acknowledged. Yet sometimes such observations provide context essential to understanding. Shutara remained silent for a moment, then spoke with measured precision. Then I will say this. In my centuries of service, I have encountered few individuals, from any realm, who demonstrate Uzumaki's capacity for growth and adaptation. His presence challenges conventional understanding in ways that may prove illuminating. The subtle shift in her spiritual pressure as she spoke told Naruto that these words, though carefully chosen, represented significant personal disclosure for someone as private as Shutara. The Soul King's attention lingered on her for a moment longer, then expanded to encompass the entire chamber. I have heard enough. Central 46, your concerns are noted but overruled. Uzumaki Naruto will maintain his position within the Royal Guard for the duration necessary to address the dimensional crisis. Relief washed over Naruto, though he maintained the respectful posture Shutara had drilled into him during their preparations. Furthermore, the Soul King continued, I authorize expanded cooperation between Soul Society and the Shinobi World representatives currently in our realm. Captain Shutara will continue to oversee this collaboration, with full authority to requisition whatever resources she deems necessary. One of the Central 46 elders stepped forward. Soul King, while we respect your decision, we request that certain limitations be placed on the outsiders, access to sacred knowledge and restricted areas. Reasonable caution. The Soul King acknowledged. Captain Shutara will determine appropriate boundaries. Her judgment in these matters is to be considered final. With that pronouncement, the audience concluded. The Central 46 representatives departed first, their formal masks hiding whatever disappointment they might feel at having their objections overruled. As Naruto and Shutara prepared to leave, the Soul King addressed them one final time, his communication directed to them alone. The threads between worlds are more complex than even you have discovered, came the non-voice. Look beyond the tears themselves to what they reveal about the nature of reality. The solution may lie not in separation or merger, but in a new equilibrium altogether. With these cryptic words lingering in their minds, they exited the sacred chamber, returning to the crystalline corridor outside. Once they were alone, Naruto released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was intense. Indeed, Shutara agreed, her own composure returning fully now that they were away from the Soul King's overwhelming presence. Though the outcome was favorable. Thanks to your support, Naruto said sincerely. I appreciate what you said in there. Something flickered across her features, discomfort, perhaps, at having her more personal assessment acknowledged directly. I merely Ted factual observations relevant to the decision. Naruto smiled slightly, recognizing her retreat to formality. Still, thank you. She inclined her head in acknowledgement but didn't respond further as they continued walking. After a few moments of companionable silence, Naruto's thoughts returned to the Soul King's final message. What do you think he meant about looking beyond the tears to what they reveal about reality? Shutara considered this, her pace slowing slightly. The Soul King perceives existence on levels beyond our comprehension. But if I were to interpret his guidance. She paused, choosing her words with characteristic precision. Perhaps he suggests the tears are not merely damages to be repaired but windows into how our worlds naturally relate to one another. Like, they're showing us something that was always there, just hidden. Naruto suggested. She glanced at him with what might have been approval. Precisely. Before your arrival, we assumed complete separati. On between dimensions was the natural order. Now we must consider the possibility that some form of connection is actually fundamental to reality's stability. Which means permanently sealing everything would be as harmful as letting all the barriers collapse, Naruto realized. Yes, Shutara's mechanical arms extended slightly in what Naruto had come to recognize as a gesture of thoughtfulness. We need not just repair, but recalibration, a new equilibrium, as the Soul King suggested. They had reached the transportation point that would return them to the Palace of Threads. Before activating it, Shutara turned to face Naruto directly. You performed well before the Soul King, she said, her tone measured but sincere. Few maintain such clarity of thought in his presence. I was nervous, Naruto admitted with a slight grin. But having you there helped. You have a way of making even the most intimidating situations feel manageable. Something in her expression softened almost imperceptibly. An unexpected compliment. But true, he insisted. Your confidence is contagious. She studied him for a moment longer than strictly necessary, as if reassessing some internal calculation. We should return. Orochimaru will be expecting our response regarding his proposed exchange. Right, Naruto agreed, recognizing the shift back to professional matters. Time to show him we don't need his data after all. Orochimaru was waiting precisely where they had left him, standing before the perfectly maintained tear with an air of patient curiosity. His serpentine eyes registered mild surprise at the assembled group approaching him, not just Naruto and Shutara, but Sasuke, Tonari, and Ikebe as well. Such a distinguished reception committee, he observed with silky amusement. I'm flattered. Don't be, Sasuke replied coldly. We're here to close your tear, not negotiate. Orochimaru's smile didn't falter. How disappointing. I thought we had established the basis for a mutually beneficial exchange. Shutara stepped forward, her mechanical arms extended in preparation for her threading technique. Your resonance data is no longer required. We have developed our own comprehensive understanding of the dimensional tear frequencies. For the first time, genuine surprise flickered across Orochimaru's features. In merely 24 hours. Impressive, particularly considering it took my research team months to compile similar analysis. We had certain advantages, Naruto explained, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from his voice. Combined perspectives from both worlds. Orochimaru studied them with renewed interest, his gaze lingering on the subtle indicators of their recent work, the refined spiritual pressure surrounding Shutara's threading apparatus, the integrated chakra pattern Naruto now manifested, the specialized activation of Tonari's Tenseigen. I see, he said finally. You've achieved harmonic synchronization between fundamentally different spiritual energies. Most fascinating. Your tear will now be closed, Ikebe announced firmly. Further unauthorized dimensional experimentation will be considered hostile action against both Soul Society and the shinobi world. Rather than appearing threatened, Orochimaru looked amused. Before you dismiss me so thoroughly, perhaps you should consider that I've discovered something your combined analysis may have missed. Despite herself, Shutara paused in her preparations. Explain. The dimensional tears aren't merely symptoms of boundary deterioration, Orochimaru said, his voice taking the tone he reserved for scientific discourse. They're manifestations of a fundamental realignment that began centuries ago. He produced a scroll, which he unfolded to reveal complex diagrams. Historical records from the Otsutsuki clan archives, acquired through various means, I assure you, indicate that our worlds were once much more closely connected. The current separation is artificial, NTAINED by constructs that are now failing. Tonari stepped forward, his Tenseigen active as he examined Orochimaru's diagrams. These are authentic Otsutsuki records, he confirmed after a moment's study. Ancient ones, from before Kagaya's arrival on Earth. Indeed, Orochimaru looked pleased at this validation. They describe a time when souls moved freely between dimensions according to natural cycles. The artificial boundaries were established during a period of conflict to prevent something called the Great Merging. This information clearly resonated with something in Shutara's understanding. Her mechanical arms retracted slightly as she processed its implications. The Soul King mentioned a new equilibrium, she said quietly, almost to herself. Not separation or merger, but a balanced relationship. Soul King, Orochimaru inquired, obvious scientific curiosity in his voice. None of your concern, Ikebe interjected firmly. Your information, while potentially valuable, doesn't change the immediate need to close unauthorized tiers. Orochimaru sighed dramatically, always so focused on the tactical rather than the strategic. Very well, he stepped away from the tear, hands raised in mock surrender. Close it if you must. I've gathered sufficient data for my current research phase. His easy acquiescence aroused immediate suspicion in Naruto. What are you really after, Orochimaru? You never give up this easily. The Sannin's smile widened slightly. Perceptive as always, Naruto-kun. Let's just say I've confirmed certain theories about Soul Society's spiritual composition that will prove useful in my ongoing work. Whether you close this particular tear or not is irrelevant to my broader research goals. You've been analyzing Soul Society's spiritual structure this entire time, Shutara realized. Her voice cooling, using this tear as a sensory apparatus. Naturally, Orochimaru confirmed without a trace of shame. Just as you've been analyzing our world through the same opening. Scientific curiosity recognizes no boundaries, dimensional or ethical. Before further debate could ensue, the tear behind Orochimaru pulsed violently, its perfectly maintained structure suddenly fluctuating. The Sannin turned in surprise, clearly not expecting this disruption to his carefully stabilized creation. Interesting, he murmured. Something is attempting to force entry from your side. Impossible, Shutara stated flatly. This tear connects directly to the shinobi world. There should be no third-party interference. The tear's fluctuations intensified, its circular form distorting as if under massive pressure. Cracks appeared in the surrounding space. Not new tears, but fractures in reality itself. Everyone back, Ikebe commanded, recognizing the danger signs. Shutara, prepare emergency containment. Her mechanical arms extended fully, golden threads racing to encircle the destabilizing tear. Naruto activated 6 Paths Sage mode, ready to assist with stabilization. While Sasuke and Tonari moved into defensive positions, Orochimaru, rather than retreating, watched the phenomenon with undisguised fascination. The resonance pattern is inverting, he observed, as if something is hijacking the established connection and redirecting it. The tear suddenly expanded outward, its edges turning jagged and black. From within emerged not a figure, but a substance, a viscous black fluid that seemed to absorb light itself. It poured onto the ground, cooling around Orochimaru's feet before he could retreat. What is this? The Sannin demanded, Genuine alarm replacing his usual composure as the substance began climbing his legs, adhering to him despite his attempts to escape. Corruption, Tonari identified grimly, his Tensagen perceiving CTS of the phenomenon invisible to the others. A perversion of natural energy and spiritual pressure combined. The black substance enveloped Orochimaru completely, his form disappearing within its expanding mass. The tear continued to disgorge the corruption until a shapeless entity twice the height of a man stood before them, vaguely humanoid but constantly shifting. Then, horrifyingly, Uru's face appeared within the mass, his features distorted in pain or perhaps transformation. Fascinating, he gasped, his voice altered but recognizably his. The cellular integration is unprecedented. A perfect fusion of physical and spiritual properties. It's consuming him, Sasuke observed tensely, and he's still analyzing it. Not consumption, Shutara corrected, her threads attempting to contain the expanding corruption without touching it directly. Assimilation. It's using his body and knowledge as a template to stabilize itself in this dimension. As if confirming her assessment, the amorphous mass began taking more definite form, a towering figure with Orochimaru's general proportions but composed entirely of the black substance. Its surface rippled with symbols reminiscent of both shinobi sealing techniques and Soul Society Kido patterns. Uzumaki Naruto. It spoke, its voice a disturbing blend of Orochimaru's tones and something older, deeper. Vessel of the Nine Tails. Sixth seat of the Royal Guard. Anomaly in the dimensional order. Naruto stepped forward, placing himself between the entity and the others. What are you, and what have you done with Orochimaru? Orochimaru is here, the entity replied, gesturing to itself. His knowledge, his abilities, his ambitions, all preserved and enhanced. I am the culmination of his research into dimensional boundaries. That's not possible, Sasuke stated flatly. Orochimaru wasn't conducting this level of dimensional research. The entity's face, a smoother, featureless version of Orochimaru's, smiled without warmth. Not in your timeline, perhaps. But dimensions extend in all directions, including what you perceive as past and future. A variant from another dimensional branch, Shutara theorized, her Analytica. Mind racing to understand this new threat, using our tear as a bridging point to cross between parallel realities. Precisely, Captain Shutara, the entity confirmed. So much more perceptive than your counterpart in my original dimension. She fell quite easily to corruption. Something cold and dangerous flickered in Shutara's spiritual pressure at these words. Her mechanical arms extended further, threads glowing with intensified power. You will not speak of matters you cannot comprehend, she said, her voice maintaining its perfect control despite the obvious threat in her stance. The corrupted Orochimaru merely smiled wider. Such devotion to composure, how fascinating to witness it still intact. Its attention returned to Naruto. I've come for you, Uzumaki Naruto. Your unique spiritual composition is essential to my work. Not happening, Naruto replied, chakra flaring around him in golden light. Whatever you're planning stops here. The entity sighed, the sound disturbing. Similar to Orochimaru's theatrical disappointment. Always so resistant to scientific progress. Very well. Without further warning, it attacked, not with conventional techniques but by expelling waves of the black corruption in all directions. Wherever the substance touched, reality itself seemed to warp and distort. Aikib responded instantly, his brush materializing in his hand. Aikimanji. With precise strokes, he painted black lines in the air that nullified the corruption where they intersected. Sasuke activated his Susanoo, the spectral purple warrior forming a protective barrier around the immediate area. Tonari engaged his Tensagen's defensive capabilities, golden energy forming complex patterns that countered the corruption's dimensional distortion effects. Naruto created a dozen shadow clones, each forming Rasengans of varying sizes and compositions. Shutara, can you contain it long enough for us to counterattack? Temporarily, she confirmed, her threads weaving an intricate cage around the entity. But conventional containment won't hold it. This corruption exists partially outside normal dimensional constraints. The entity laughed, a sound that chilled Naruto despite his determination. You understand so little of what you face. I am not merely Orochimaru corrupted. I am evolution itself, the inevitable reconciliation of artificial dimensional boundaries. It flexed against Shutara's threading, the golden constraints straining against its power. Black tendrils seeped through gaps in the containment, seeking targets with unsettling intelligence. We need to force it back through the tear, Aikib called out, continuing to nullify corruption with his brush techniques. Severing its connection to our dimension should destabilize its form. The tear itself is corrupted, Tonari countered, his Tensagen perceiving the dimensional pathways. Forcing it back might simply spread the corruption to the shinobi world. Naruto analyzed the situation rapidly, years of battlefield experience combining with his recent training in Soul Society's spiritual mechanics. We need to purify it first, then redirect it. Purification requires understanding its fundamental composition, Shutara replied, her mechanical arms straining to maintain the containment, which appears to be a hybrid of hollow Ryutsu, corrupted chakra, and something else altogether. An idea formed in Naruto's mind, dangerous, potentially disastrous, but possibly their only option. I might be able to sense its true nature in sage mode. If I can identify the corruption's core frequency, maybe we can disrupt it. Too risky, Shutara objected immediately. Direct spiritual contact with this entity could corrupt your own energy signature. We don't have much choice, Naruto countered. already beginning to gather natural energy. Everyone, buy me 30 seconds. Understanding his intent, the others intensified their efforts. Sasuke's Susanoo launched a barrage of spectral arrow WS that forced the entity to focus on defense. Tonari used his Tensagen's gravitational manipulation to compress the corruption's expanding tendrils. Ikebe continued his naming nullification system, adequately removing the entity's influence from sections of the battlefield. Shutara, despite her obvious reservations, reinforced her threading technique to create a momentary opening for Naruto's attempt. 20 seconds is your limit, she told him firmly. Beyond that, the corruption will begin spiritual integration. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement, closing his eyes as he entered perfect sage mode. With Kurama's cooperation, he extended his senses toward the corrupted entity, seeking the truth beneath its chaotic surface. What he found nearly overwhelmed him. The corruption wasn't simply a substance or even an entity in the conventional sense. It was a fundamental distortion of reality's basic principles, a cancer in the dimensional fabric itself. Careful, Naruto, Kurama warned within him. This thing exists outside normal rules. It's like nothing we've encountered before. I can feel it, Naruto replied internally. It's like negative space. Not just darkness, but the absence of proper existence. Pushing deeper into his sensory perception, Naruto identified something unexpected at the corruption's core, a familiar resonance pattern, inverted and twisted but recognizable nonetheless. It's using the same frequencies we mapped, he called out to the others. The dimensional resonance patterns, it's hijacking them, reversing their natural flow. Shutara's eyes widened slightly in understanding. Then theoretically, we could counter it by reinforcing the correct flow pattern. Exactly. Naruto opened his eyes, sage mode still active. But we'd need to synchronize CTLY, hit it with the proper resonance from all sides simultaneously. The entity, seemingly aware of their discovery, intensified its assault. Black tendrils shot toward Naruto specifically, aiming to disrupt his sage mode before a counter strategy could be implemented. Shutara intercepted the attack, her threads forming a golden barrier directly in the corruption's path. The black substance made contact with her spiritual energy, and for a moment, the two forces struggled for dominance. Now, Uzumaki, she commanded, strain evident in her voice despite her perfect composure. I cannot maintain this interference indefinitely. Naruto acted instantly, creating 4 shadow clones that positioned themselves around the entity. Each clone began forming a specialized Rasengan incorporating the C-Orect resonance frequency he had identified. Sasuke, Tonari, he called out, I need your powers synchronized with mine. Shutara, your threading technique is the key, it needs to connect all our attacks into a single harmonized strike. Understanding immediately, Shutara's mechanical arms extended to their fullest, golden threads racing to connect Naruto and his clones, Sasuke's Susanoo, Tonari's Tensagen energy projection, and her own spiritual pressure into a unified network. Ikebe, she called to the Royal Guard commander. We need your naming authority to make this permanent. Ikebe nodded gravely, positioning himself at the critical junction point. Ready when you are. The corrupted entity sensed their strategy, its form rippling with increased agitation. Fascinating approach, it said in its disturbing hybrid voice. But fundamentally flawed. You cannot counter corruption with conventional harmonics. Watch us, Naruto replied, determination hardening his features. With a synchronized movement that spoke of their growing unity, the assembled group launched their combined attack. Naruto's resonance-tuned Rasengans, Sasuke's Rinnegan-enhanced Susanoo arrows, Tonari's purified Tensagen energy beams, and Shutara's threading technique converged on the entity from all directions. The threads connected each attack, ensuring perfect synchronization and amplifying their combined effect. As the harmonized energy made contact, Ikebe swept his brush in a complex pattern, naming the combined technique Dimensional Restoration. The entity writhed as the correctly aligned D-resonance patterns penetrated its corrupted form. For a moment, it seemed their strategy would succeed. The black substance began to separate from Orochimaru's assimilated form, revealing glimpses of the original Sannin within. Then, with terrible suddenness, the entity adapted. The corruption flowed like liquid, absorbing their harmonized energy and incorporating it into its own structure. A valiant effort, it acknowledged, growing larger as it assimilated their attack. But as I said, corruption cannot be countered conventionally. Naruto refused to accept defeat. There's always a way, we just need to. His words cut short as the entity launched a massive counterattack, not toward him, but directly at Shutara. The black corruption formed a spear-like projection that moved faster than even Flash Step could evade. Shutara, Naruto shouted in warning, already moving toward her despite knowing he couldn't reach her in time. She attempted to defend with her threading technique, but the corruption bypassed her spiritual barriers as if they weren't there. The black spear pierced her chest, emerging through her back in a horrific display. For a single, terrible moment, Shutara's perfect composure shattered. Her eyes widened in genuine shock, her mechanical arms freezing in mid-motion. Then the corruption began spreading from the wound, black tendrils crawling across her body with terrifying speed. No, Naruto's shout contained more than just alarm. There was raw emotion behind it, something deeper than professional concern for a colleague. With blinding speed enhanced by Sage Mode and Kurama's power, he reached her side, catching her as she began to fall. The corruption continued its advance, already covering half her body. Interesting, the entity observed clinically. Why, our attachment to this one is stronger than anticipated. Another variable to incorporate into my analysis. Naruto barely heard the words, his focus entirely on Shutara. Her eyes remained open, clear despite the obvious pain. Uzumaki, she managed, her voice strained but still controlled. The threads, take them. He didn't understand at first, until he saw her mechanical arms beginning to detach from her increasingly corrupted form. With her remaining strength, she was transferring her spiritual threading apparatus to him. I can't, he protested. We'll find another way to stop this, to heal you. There is no healing from this, she stated with brutal clarity. Take them. Complete what we started. The raw determination in her eyes silenced his objections. As the corruption reached her neck, her mechanical arms detached completely, hovering uncertainly before moving toward Naruto. Accept them, she instructed, her voice weakening. They respond to intent and spiritual pressure. Your hybrid energy should be compatible. Naruto reached out hesitantly, and the mechanical arms responded to his gesture, attaching themselves to his back in a manner that should have been painful, but somehow felt right, as if they belonged there. Golden threads immediately extended from the apparatus, responding to his unconscious desire to save Shutara. They wrapped around her, temporarily halting the corruption's advance. It won't last, she warned, a rare softness entering her expression. But this transfer might. Use them well, Uzumaki Naruto. The entity, which had been watching this exchange with scientific interest, suddenly seemed alarmed. The threading apparatus cannot transfer hosts. This violates established parameters. Its distress confirmed they had stumbled upon something significant, perhaps even a weakness. Shutara, despite her deteriorating condition, noticed it too. The corruption fears unexpected variables, she observed, her analytical mind functioning despite the growing darkness consuming her. Your unpredictability. It cannot calculate outcomes when you're involved. Understanding dawned on Naruto. Because I exist outside its dimensional framework. I'm the anomaly it can't account for. New determination flooded through him, along with something else. Shutara's threading technique, its principles and methodologies flowing into his consciousness. The mechanical arms fully integrated with his spiritual pressure. I won't let you die, he told her fiercely. And I won't let this thing win. The corruption had nearly reached her face now, only her eyes remaining uncorrupted. In them, Naruto saw something he'd never witnessed from Shutara before, absolute trust. Then don't, she replied simply. With those words, she closed her eyes, surrendering to the inevitable. The corruption completed its coverage, transforming her entirely into the same black substance that composed the main entity. Another valuable addition to my collective, the entity declared, extending tendrils to reclaim Shutara's corrupted form. Her knowledge of Soul Society's threading techniques will prove most useful. No, the single word carried such weight that everyone present felt its impact in their spiritual pressure. Naruto stood slowly, Shutara's mechanical arms now fully integrated with his chakra network, golden threads extending in patterns even he didn't fully understand. The entity hesitated, something like uncertainty entering its composition for the first time. This development was not predicted. The threading apparatus should not function for you. Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises, Naruto replied, his voice deadly calm. 6 paths Sage Mode activated automatically, golden chakra merging with the spiritual threads to create something entirely new, a hybrid technique that had never existed in either world. Sasuke, recognizing the shift in momentum, positioned himself to support Naruto's approach. Whatever you're planning, I've got your back. Same here, Tonari confirmed, his Tensagen glowing with renewed intensity. Ikeeb stepped back slightly, wisdom born of centuries telling him to allow this unexpected development to unfold without interference. Naruto's focus remained absolute, fixed on Shutara's corrupted form and the entity controlling it. You made a mistake targeting her, he said quietly. A big one. Sentiment, the entity dismissed. Though a note of uncertainty had entered its voice. Irrational and ultimately meaningless. You really don't understand anything, do you? Naruto's hands moved in a complex pattern, combining hand seals from his world with the spiritual gestures Shutara had taught him. The mechanical arms responded to his movements, golden threads forming increasingly intricate patterns around him. What I understand, the entity replied, gathering its power for a decisive strike, is that anomalies must be eliminated for proper dimensional restructuring to proceed. It launched a massive wave of corruption directly at Naruto, enough to engulf him completely. But instead of evading, he stood his ground, the golden threads from the mechanical arms forming a complex three-dimensional seal in the air before him. Sage art. Divine threading technique. The corrupted wave hit the golden seal and stopped, not deflected or absorbed, but fundamentally rewritten. The black substance transformed on contact, reverting to its component energies and reorganizing according to the pattern established by Naruto's hybrid technique. Impossible, the entity exclaimed, genuine alarm evident in its voice. This level of dimensional manipulation requires centuries of expertise. Good thing I've got an excellent teacher, Naruto replied, advancing steadily. Each step extended his technique's influence. Golden threads spreading outward to intercept and transform more of the corruption. The entity retreated for the first time, attempting to recall its dispersed substance and consolidate its power. The corrupted form that had been Shutara remained in place, however, seemingly unable to respond to the entity's commands. Sensing advantage, Naruto focused his technique specifically on her. Shutara, he called, uncertainty momentarily cracking his determined exterior. If you can hear me in there, help me finish this. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, astonishingly, the corrupted form moved, not toward the main entity as expected, but toward Naruto. Black hands reached out, not to attack but in a gesture almost like offering. Impossible, the entity raged. She cannot retain independence within the corruption. No consciousness survives assimilation. Yet the evidence stood before them, Shutara's form, still composed entirely of the black substance, but moving with unmistakable purpose against the entity's will. Understanding flowed between Naruto and what remained of Shutara without words. The mechanical arms responded to both their intents simultaneously, an unprecedented synchronization of two consciousnesses through the threading technique. Together, Naruto said simply. The corrupted form that had been Shutara placed its hands against his, black meeting golden as their energies aligned. The mechanical arms extended to their fullest, threads multiplying exponentially until they formed a dome around the entire battlefield. Within this golden enclosure, reality itself seemed to recalibrate. The corruption began to separate from itself, individual components returning to their natural states, spiritual pressure, chakra, natural energy, each finding its proper place in the dimensional order. At the center of the dome, the main entity fought desperately against this fundamental restructuring. You cannot undo what has been done, it insisted, its form fluctuating wildly. The corruption is irreversible, the dimensional merging inevitable. Maybe, Naruto acknowledged, maintaining perfect focus despite the strain of channeling such complex energies. But that doesn't mean we accept your version of it. With a final surge of combined power, Naruto and Shutara's corrupted form completed their technique. The golden threads tightened around the entity, forcing complete separation of its component energies. No, it cried out, Orochimaru's features briefly visible within its dissolving form. My research, my perfect integration, is over, Naruto finished firmly. The entity collapsed in on itself, the corruption dissolving into particles of pure energy that scattered throughout the dome. Where they touched the golden threads, they were purified and redirected, flowing back through the dimensional tear which had begun to heal itself under the technique's influence. As the last of the corruption disappeared, the tear sealed completely, not through force, but through natural restoration of the dimensional boundary's proper function. The golden dome faded, leaving Naruto standing with the mechanical arms still extended from his back. Before him, the black substance coating Shutara's form began to flake away, revealing glimpses of her original self beneath. "Shutara," he called hesitantly, hope warring with fear in his voice. The last of the corruption fell away, leaving her kneeling on the ground, whole, but clearly weakened. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on Naruto with effort. "Uzumaki," she acknowledged, her voice faint but unmistakably hers. "Your execution of the threading technique was unorthodox." A disbelieving laugh escaped him. Even at the brink of death, her critical assessment remained intact. "Sorry about that, I'm still learning." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Indeed, though perhaps not as much as I assumed." Her gaze shifted to the mechanical arms extending from his back, still there despite the completion of their technique. "The apparatus has accepted you fully. Unprecedented, but apparently effective." Before Naruto could respond, she swayed slightly, exhaustion finally claiming her. He caught her before she could fall, supporting her with gentle hands that belied the immense power he had just wielded. Ikebe approached cautiously, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "In all my centuries, I have never witnessed such a technique. The perfect synchronization of two fundamentally different spiritual approaches. Is she going to be all right?" Naruto asked, his priorities clear. The Royal Guard commander examined Shutara carefully, his experienced senses perceiving what others could not. "The corruption has been purged completely, another unprecedented outcome. With rest, she should recover fully." Relief washed over Naruto, so powerful he nearly collapsed himself. Only then did he realize how deeply the fear of losing her had affected him. "The mechanical arms," Sasuke observed, approaching with Tonari beside him. "They're still attached to you." Naruto looked over his shoulder at the apparatus, which had retracted to a resting position but showed no signs of detaching. "Yeah, I noticed that too." Quote, "A permanent transfer," Shutara explained weakly. "The threading technique has recognized you as a compatible host." The implications of this were enormous, as evidenced by Ikebe's raised eyebrows and Tonari's surprised expression. For a Royal Guard's Zanpakuto equivalent to accept a new wielder was unprecedented. "Does that mean?" Naruto began uncertainly. "It means," Shutara interrupted, her voice strengthening slightly as she straightened in his supporting arms, "that our work together has only just begun, Uzumaki Naruto." Something past between them in that moment, an understanding beyond words, a connection forged in battle and cemented by the literal sharing of her most personal spiritual manifestation. "I guess it does," he agreed softly. Recovery was slow for Shutara, though faster than anyone had anticipated given the severity of her corruption. For 3 days, she remained in the specialized healing chambers of the royal palace, attended by Kiryu Hikifuna herself. Naruto visited each day, still adjusting to the mechanical arms that now permanently extended from his back. They responded to his thoughts with increasing accuracy as he learned their capabilities, the threading technique becoming more natural with each practice session. On the 4th day, he arrived to find Shutara sitting up, her composure fully restored. Her spiritual pressure remained somewhat diminished. "You're looking better," he observed, taking the seat beside her bed that had become his regular post. "Functional recovery proceeds at an acceptable rate," she replied, though the clinical assessment was softened by the lack of her usual formality. Without her elaborate headdress and formal attire, wearing only the simple white robe of healing, she appeared almost vulnerable, a stark contrast to her normal perfect composure. "Kiryu says you'll be back to full strength within a week," Naruto said, the mechanical arms extending slightly. In what he had discovered was their automatic response to his concern. "Though she recommends taking it easy for at least a month after that." A slight frown creased Shutara's brow. "A month is excessive. The dimensional situation requires immediate attention." "The situation is stable for now," Naruto assured her. "After we defeated that corrupted entity, the tears have been decreasing in frequency and intensity." Toneri thinks we accidentally stumbled upon a solution. Our combined techniques somehow reset the dimensional resonance patterns. Shutara's expression grew thoughtful. Not accidental, she corrected. The threading technique adapted to your unique spiritual composition, creating a hybrid approach that addressed the fundamental imbalance. She glanced at the mechanical arms extending from his back with something like professional pride. The apparatus recognized the potential in your spiritual energy, a potential I had only begun to appreciate. Coming from Shutara, this was extraordinary praise. Naruto found himself unexpectedly moved by her acknowledgement. I couldn't have done it without you, he said sincerely. Even when you were corrupted, some part of you remained. You fought it from the inside. Helped me complete the technique. Something flickered in her eyes, a shadow of the experience she had endured. I remember. Fragments. Darkness. Overwhelming pressure. The entity attempting to assimilate my consciousness. Her voice remained steady despite the disturbing recollection. Then, golden light. Your voice, calling to me through the corruption. She met his gaze directly. You refused to give up on me, even when logic dictated you should. That's kind of my thing, Naruto replied with a slight smile. Never giving up, especially on people he caught himself. Suddenly uncertain how to complete that sentence. Shutara tilted her head slightly, studying him with that perceptive gaze that always seemed to see more than he intended to reveal. On people you value, she finished for him, offering a neutral completion to his thought. Yeah, he agreed, though the word felt insufficient. Something like that. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when the mechanical arms shifted slightly, golden threads momentarily materializing before disappearing again. They respond to emotional states as well as conscious intent, Shutara observed.